Welcome back to my channel, guys. If you're searching for an incredible novel, check out my Patreon page. Your support will help transform this story into an exciting audiobook. Join me on this adventure. By becoming a Patreon member, you'll be helping me keep creating and bringing this content to life. Thank you for being part of the journey. Chapter 41. Third Person's POV. Another week later. Peter and Harry were seen walking together going to their next class. Harry turned to Peter and said, "Hey, listen to this, Liz is throwing a massive party at her house and is inviting mostly everyone, wanna go?" Peter looked at Harry in confusion. "A party? What for?" Harry just shrugged his shoulders. "I don't know, apparently she really wants to throw a party since we're now in high school. She wanted to be the first one to do it." Peter thought about it and asked, "When is it?" "It's on Friday, so in a few days," Harry said. "Wait, so she's really having a party for no reason?" Peter asked, still somewhat confused by the party. "I know, right? I even asked her myself, and all she was, and I quote, 'You don't need a reason to have a party, silly. It's all about having a good time,' end quote," Harry said, trying to mimic his girlfriend's voice. "I hope I don't really sound like that, Harry," Liz said, appearing behind them, causing Harry to jump in fright. "Honey," Harry said, turning around and looking at Liz, who had a hand on her hips while looking at Harry with a raised brow. "I could never try or even come close to matching your angelic voice," Harry said, trying not to get into trouble. Peter, seeing this, laughs and makes a whipping motion. "Whoopee ssh. Already dating and you're already being whipped. Not a good look, Harry, not a good look." Harry rolls his eyes. "Oh please, like you're not the same with Gwen, you're even more whipped than me." Peter then puffed up his chest. "Oh please, I'll have you know I'm an alpha male, I'm the one with the pants in the relationship." "Is that right?" Gwen said, appearing right behind him in the same posture as Liz, with MJ and Felicia slightly behind her. It was Peter's turn to jump up in fright and quickly spin around on his heels. "Baby," Peter said in a sweet voice, "you know I was only joking." Gwen looked at him unamused. She hummed with sass that would make any black woman do a double take, to make sure she really was a white woman. "I love you," Peter squeaked out, while Harry just laughed at him and returned Peter's whipping motion back onto him. "Ha! Who's whipped now?" Harry said rather smugly. Gwen just playfully scoffed before softly slapping him in the arm. She wrapped her hands around his arm and teased, "Let's just go to class, my alpha male, don't want to be too late." While Liz did the same with Harry and they started walking to class, with MJ and Felicia following a bit behind. Felicia nudged MJ to get her attention, and when she looked over to Felicia, she saw her motioning a finger to her open mouth with her tongue sticking out and making a gagging expression, causing them to start laughing, as MJ felt the same way about their situation. And while walking to class, Liz asked, making sure, "So you're all coming to the party, right?" Peter looked at Gwen, who just shrugged her shoulders, motioning that she didn't care either way for him to decide. Peter nodded his head. "Sure, it sounds fun." The others nodded as well, while Felicia commented, "It's only been almost a month since I got here and I'm already invited to a party. I must be really popular," causing the others to snicker at her comment. "Is it themed or something?" MJ asked. "Nope, it's just a fun party," she said, while MJ just nodded at that. They soon reached their class and sat down where they regularly sit. And as they sat down, the bell rang, which made the teacher start their lesson. And as soon as their lesson started, Peter's and Gwen's phone buzzed at the time. When they checked it, they saw Arnie's warning message. "A great car collision with a tipped-over oil tank truck, must hurry." Both Gwen and Peter raised their hands at the same time urgently. The teacher looked at them with a question look. "Do you guys have any questions? I barely started the lesson." They both then spoke at the same time. "Can I use the bathroom?" "Mom, you both need to use the bathroom at the same time." "Yup," they both said in sync. "I don't know, can you?" "Yes, I can," they both said at the same time and grabbed their bags and sped walk out of there. The teacher could only look at them in shock, and as they walked out the door he realized what happened. "Wait. You can't do that. Get back here." But they were already gone. They were both running and quickly went into their respective bathrooms. Once there, they turned invisible and took out their masks and changed their clothes. Once they were done, they climbed out of the building while invisible and put their backpacks on the rooftop. Let's go, Peter said while they were still invisible and jumped up from the school rooftop to a rooftop that was close by. Once they were a few rooftops away, they undid their invisible and made their way onto the accident. Due to their daily uses of their powers, they have gotten better at controlling them. Gwen was seen skating on the edges of the rooftop. Once she built enough momentum, she would transition into a swing, making her go at a fast speed. While Peter was running on the side of a building with electricity surrounding him, and using that momentum to swing farther away, making them reach their destination quickly. When they arrived, everything was a mess. Cars were flipped over on top of each other, and it looks like no ambulances are in sight at the moment. Though Peter and Gwen did hear them as they swung into action, as soon as they arrived they quickly got to work. Gwen saw oil spilling from the tank and running down towards the other cars. She quickly went a blast of frost over it, completely covering it. Peter went and started taking people out of their cars. Some of the cars were even upside down, so Peter had to yank the door of its hinges and get people out of there. What they didn't notice at the time was the wiring of a car that was out and cut and flailing around close to the oil that was already leaked out and was running down towards the car. Sparks kept zapping off the wires while Peter and Gwen were getting people out and away from the wreckage. The oil finally caught up the wiring. A spark flew and landed on the oil, making it catch on fire, following the trail back from where it came from, which neither Gwen or Peter seemed to notice as they were busy getting people out of the cars. While they got people out, they soon heard people from the front of the accident yelling out and calling out their names. Spider-Man, Ghost Spider, get the people out of there, the tank's about to blow. Both Peter and Gwen quickly looked up and saw a trail of fire around the tank, burning up the ice that Gwen used and people running away. Gwen was about to go and stop it, but Peter stopped her. Don't, you won't make it in time, just help me take all of the remaining people out. They then heard the sound of sirens making their way to their direction. Peter and Gwen were then moving faster than ever. They ripped the doors open and quickly started ripping off their seatbelts and taking them to safety, until only both a mother and kid remained, but then, boom. The tank exploded, causing a chain reaction and sending both Peter and Gwen into their spidey senses at maximum capacity. Everything slowed down as they started moving. Peter, who was surrounded with his electricity, ran to the car and ripped both doors to the car open. He grabbed the mom and threw her towards Gwen. While that was happening, the explosion started to catch up with them. Gwen caught the mother of the child while Peter took a hold of the child and tried to run and web zip away. Peter ran from the explosion while holding a child close to his chest while holding its head in place so it wouldn't die from whiplash. The explosion quickly caught up to him. Luckily, he was just an inch away from the explosion. Peter used his entire body to block the heat from the child. And while doing so, due to the explosion, parts of the car were sent flying out everywhere. A piece of hot sharp metal ran across Peter's back, ripping his suit open and leaving him a large gash that started spilling blood. Peter screamed out while still not letting go of the child, protecting him with his body. Spider-Man. Gwen screamed out. Peter was huffing and puffing, kneeling down while the large fire was occurring in the background. While still breathing heavily, he looked at the child and asked, "Huff, are you okay? You're not puff hurt, are you?" Peter asked while examining the child as he put him down. The child, with tears in his eyes, shook his head. "Are you okay?" he asked with tears spilling out of his eyes. "Huff, puff, never better, kiddo," Peter said, unable to get up due to the pain. Gwen quickly got to where Peter said and asked while crying, "Oh God, pet dash." She stopped herself when she saw the kid, Spider-Man. And through sobs she examined his back. "Your back. It's profusely bleeding." She cried out, which just made the kid cry out as well. "GW, Ghost, there's a child present," he yelled, which made Gwen forcefully calm herself down. She just continued to quietly sobs. Peter sighed, "Just web it up carefully." Gwen, while she continued crying, nodded, and started to carefully use her webs and carefully wrap around his body, mostly his injuries. The mother quickly knelt down and brought her son onto a big hug and started thanking them profusely while crying herself, "Thank you, you saved our lives." Peter, who was still kneeling, was still breathing heavily. "I'm just glad you're safe." "But mister, what about you, your back? You lost a lot of blood," the mother said, looking at Peter with extreme worry in her eyes. Peter just flexed a bicep to appear healthy toward the child as he said, "I eat all of my vegetables so I heal up quicker than most, so don't worry, I'll recover," making him wince as he moved. The mother though got the message and nodded graciously. "I wish I could hug you right now and express my thanks, but your condition. A high five could do, don't you think? Peter joked while Gwen still attended to his wounds. The mother laughed through her tears and nodded her head as both the mother and son both high-fived Peter, making them both laugh and feel better. And done, Gwen said, relieved. Can you please help me up? Peter asked Gwen. Gwen nodded and knelt down and her head underneath Peter's arm and started to help him up. Making him wince all the way up, Peter started limping towards the crowd who watched everything. They all then started to clap and cry out softly. The applause then started increasing, causing some of them to yell, "Thank you, Spider-Man, thank you, Ghost Spider, we wouldn't have been alive if it wasn't for you. Hope you get better, Spider-Man. Please get some rest. You guys deserve it." Peter just waved, as he started walking with Gwen's support. "Let's leave," Peter whispered into her ear, to which Gwen nodded as they both webbed to the closest building and started swinging away, although it was really difficult for Peter. Chapter 42. Third Person's POV. Once they were a few buildings away, they decided to turn invisible and land on top of a rooftop. "Gwen, I need you to do me a favor," Peter said, sitting unable to deal with the pain at the moment due to the amount of swinging he just did. "What is it, Peter?" Gwen asked worriedly. "I need you to go back while invisible and clean out all the blood." "Why? I mean, I know why, but I still don't think they would be actively looking to clone us right now. We're barely known. It just seems weird," Gwen asked, confused. Peter then looked at her and blinked for a few seconds. Sigh, "I really envy your positivity and optimism on the potential of people. I just don't want a clone of myself running around in the future, who I would then have to catch and then teach moral ethics to." Gwen reluctantly nodded and said, "Just wait here for me." Peter nodded and waited for Gwen. After a few minutes of waiting, Gwen returned with a Ziploc bag with a metal shard with Peter's blood on it. "Luckily I got it on time. It was about to be driven away for examination," Gwen said with a hint of relief in her voice. "Did you clean the blood that splattered everywhere?" Peter asked anxiously. "Yup, I had Arnie skin the area, and after I was done freezing it to bits, it was all clear." Peter let out a sigh of relief. "Come on, we have to go to school, we're going to be in so much trouble." Gwen then hung her head. "Dad's going to kill us. I can already hear him already. Because of that punk, you have been behaving badly and not going to a lot of your classes recently," Gwen said while doing an impression of her dad. Peter just chuckled. "Let's get going, we'll have to deal with detention later on the day, so it's better to get this over with quickly." Gwen nodded her head as they started to swing away back to school. They turned invisible once again when they got close by and climbed their way on the roof where they left their bags at. After grabbing their bag, they quickly made their way into the bathroom from the window and started changing inside the stall, while Gwen put the metal shard inside her bag. When they were finished, they came out of their bathroom at the same time and raced to class, and as they went in and opened the door, the bell rang, signifying the end of their class. The teacher looked towards the door with an unamused expression. "What perfect time for the two of you to join detention after school, the two of you, not any second later." Both Peter and Gwen hung their head. "Yes, Mr. Patrick," both of them said at the same. Everyone then started walking out of the classroom and started heading towards the lunchroom. While walking towards the cafeteria, Peter and Harry were walking behind everyone talking. "Where do you and Gwen keep disappearing recently? You two couldn't possibly be doing it in school." Peter, who had his bag over his good shoulder, just shook his head with a smile as he just said, "We were just busy with something." Harry just gave Peter a teasing smirk as he slapped Peter on the back. "Peter, my ma dash." Arg! Peter quickly covered his mouth and winced into his mouth with tears in his eyes. "Harry, I'm going to fucking castrate you, fuck." Harry, when he slapped Peter's back, felt something wet on his hand, and when he looked at it, he saw it was stained with blood. His eyes widened in shock as he started to breathe heavily while looking at his blood-stained hand shakily. He then was about to scream out in panic, but before he could do that, Peter quickly got in front of Harry to cover his now blood-stained back. "Don't scream out or anything, sigh, hide your hands and follow me to the bathroom. Stay behind me so my back isn't seen, quickly." Harry wanted to ask a million questions but chose to follow Peter's orders as they sped walk towards the bathroom. As they arrived, Peter was glad it was empty. Once inside, Peter locked the door. And as he did, questions just kept coming out of Harry's mouth. "What the hell, Peter? You're bleeding. It doesn't look good. Do you want me to call the ambulance or something? What happened? Why are you like this? I'm pretty sure you weren't like this before you left with Gwen. Just what the hell is going on? Harry, if you don't shut up in the next 5 seconds, I'm going to punch you in the throat," Peter said calmly. Wash your hands, Peter said while pointing at the sink. Harry, although still in a state of shock, nodded his head and did what he was told. Please, Peter, I'm really worried here. Just what is going on? Harry said while washing the blood off his hand. Peter slowly took off his shirt and showed Harry his webbed-up back. Seeing this, Harry took out his phone and was about to call an ambulance at what he was seeing, but Peter shot his web and yanked the phone off his hands. Harry looked at his hands in shock before looking up, and once he took a better look at Peter's back, and saw what he was wearing underneath his shirt, Harry almost yelled out, "Spider-Man." But Peter reacted quickly. He shot a web, webbing Harry's mouth up. "Don't worry about it," I said, "there's no need to call anybody, it'll heal, but I'll need your help." "And yes, I'm Spider-Man." Harry was in so much shock he didn't know what to say at this point. It was almost overwhelming. Harry then started to connect the dots. He ripped off the webs from his mouth with a disgusted look before saying, "Wait, if you're Spider-Man, then that means Gwen is, oh my god." "My friends are vigilantes," Harry said, unsure of what to do with that information, but then he remembered Peter said he needed his help. Harry was terribly confused about everything that was going on. Although he's slowly getting it, it still doesn't make it any less confusing. But still nodded his head. He's seeing his best friend bleeding out, of course he's going to do everything in his power to help. Peter pulled up his sleeve and grabbed the bracelet he always wears. He took it off and threw it to Harry, who caught it with 2 hands. "What do you want me to do with this?" Harry said while looking at Peter strangely. "You're not hallucinating due to blood loss, are you? When I punch your face for slapping me in the back, then we'll see who's hallucinating." "Just put that damn thing on," Peter said, a bit irritated. Harry just put it on and looked at Peter, tilting his head. "What now?" "Flick your wrist," Peter said. Harry nodded while still looking at Peter strangely and flicked his wrist, and as he did, the bracelet started expanding slightly and with a small button was placed at the middle of his palm. "Whoa!" Harry said, shocked, looking at his wrist in fascination. "Just what is this?" he asked, examining every part of his wrist. "It's my web shooter." Now Arnie switched to first aid webs, Peter said as a hologram appeared all around Harry's wrist. The hologram then started rotating from different symbols. One of the symbol was a thunderbolt, another was a regular web design, another web design appeared, but this one appeared to be wet and drippy. Until it stopped at a bold cross and the hologram disappeared. "Just how much are you hiding, Peter?" Harry said in disbelief. "Sigh, I'll explain everything later. For now, just follow what I say. I need you take off the webs on back." Harry slowly nodded his head and appeared behind Peter's back. He started to slowly take off Peter's back web, which was agonizing for him, and disgusting for Harry. Peter was holding onto the sink with shut eyes. While gripping the sink, it started to slightly crack due to the force of which Peter was holding it. With one final pull, Harry took out the last bit of web. Peter sighed once again before saying, "Now I need to aim at my back with the web shooters and press the middle button. It will release a thick web. These webs are bathed in disinfectants and other materials that help in sanitizing the wounds and help in better healing. Do not let go of the button, it will keep releasing the webs as he shoots it out. I need you to walk around me, wrapping me up with it." Harry nodded seriously as Peter backed away slightly and lifted his arms slightly. Harry then started following Peter's instructions until his wounds were wrapped back up. Chapter 43. Third Person's POV. Harry continued spaying and wrapping around the first aid webs around Peter, and while doing so Harry asked, "So who's Arnie?" "My AI created. Her full name is ARACHNID. "The hell? You have a fully functional AI? Where have you been keeping her all this time, and for how long have you had her?" 3 years now. I finished making her when I was 12 and I started making her since I was 7, Peter said while still lifting his arms. When he finished he lowered his head slightly and nervously asked, "So who else knows?" Peter hummed questioningly, while he went and grabbed his backpack from the floor and took out a spare shirt he always carries. "Who else knows that you and Gwen are Spider-Man, spider people?" Harry asked with an awkward expression on his face. "Believe or not, you're actually the very first person to ever know about it," Peter said. He then looked at Harry and saw him smiling to himself. Peter then gave Harry a teasing expression. "Oh? Are you glad you're my first?" Harry's gained a tiny blush on his cheeks as he says, "Shut up, we're best friends, you know literally everything about me, although I'm kinda sad you haven't told me what has been going on with you guys. I can understand why. So to be the first person you actually share this with is kinda nice." Peter turns to Harry and puts a hand on his shoulder and gains a really serious expression which makes Harry slightly nervous. "Yeah?" he asked with a bit of apprehension. I'm already in a serious relationship with Gwen and I'm not into guys, and you just got into a serious relationship with Liz, you shouldn't cheat on her, so I'm sorry I can't accept your feelings. Harry stood stunned for a moment before slapping Peter's hand off his shoulder. Fuck you. That's not how I meant it and you know it. Harry said, blushing. Bastard, he says as he watches Peter start doubling over in laughter. Harry just scoffed at Peter. Peter then started shaking his head while still laughing. He then started picking up the blood-soaked webs and the blood-tainted shirt he wore before. He then put everything together and webbed it up with his other web shooter and put everything in his bag. He then took off his glasses and put on his spare shirt. While Peter was bent over washing his face in the sink, Harry hesitantly called out. Peter. What's up? Sorry about what happened. Oh, don't worry about it, it wasn't your fault, no matter how much I wanted to punch you in your face when you did it, I know you didn't have malicious intent behind it. Harry let out a sigh of relief, and was glad Peter wasn't actually mad at him. Peter then went and grabbed a few napkins from the dispenser next to the sink and started drying his face. Peter then held out his hand towards Harry. Harry just looked at him in confusion. Webs hooters was all Peter said. Ah, he said, realizing he still had them on. He then took it off and tossed it to Peter, who just casually grabbed it with one hand and put it on his wrist. He then went and grabbed his backpack and glasses and made sure there was no evidence left behind. As they walked out of the bathroom, Harry couldn't help but ask in a really low voice, wait, aren't you like an enhanced human or spider or something? Do you really need glasses now? As they made their way to lunch, Peter just casually replied with a nope. Then why wear then? Is it to hide your identity? Nope, Peter said. He then gave Harry a smirk and put it under his chin. I still wear then cause I look fantastic in glasses. Harry just gave Peter a deadpan look before rolling his eyes, but then once again curiosity got the better of him. So how did it happen? How did you become Remember the trip to Oscorp? You mean the one where you and Gwen left EA? No way, is that why you two left early? Yup. Holy shit, it's all starting to make sense. Before it was only rarely that you would come to school tired and falling asleep every step of the way, but ever since he started appearing it has become more frequent. Honestly, I thought the two of you finally did it, and that's why you two have been so tired. Peter just looked at Harry weirdly, while Harry just shrugged his shoulders. When the two of them arrived at the cafeteria, they went and got their lunch and sat down with the rest of the girls. Felicia looked at both Peter and Harry weirdly. Peter, noticing her look, lifted a brow and asked, what? Oh, nothing, it's just suspicious, she said with a teasing smirk. What is? Harry asked while eating. I just, the two of you suddenly disappearing, for who knows how long. Then Peter returns with a different shirt. It just makes one wonder what the two of you were doing. Harry nearly choked on his food when he heard that and started coughing. Seriously, it hasn't even been an hour and my sexuality has been questioned twice. Harry. Liz, who has started joining them at their lunch table since she started dating Harry, asked worriedly and with a little accusatory tone in her voice. Harry looked at Liz in shock, not believing that even his girlfriend was questioning it. Are you serious? Liz scoffs and pats his arms. No, silly. But I am curious why you're wearing another shirt. MJ asked while looking at Peter weirdly. All I'm going to say is that it's difficult to pee with a boner. Peter couldn't come up with a better lie, so to protect his secret he chose to incriminate himself. Peter. They all said at the same time. Even Harry smacked him lightly on the arm. Dude, he says. Peter just shrugged his shoulders. What? It happens to best of us. Peter, Gwen calmly called out. Yes. Please shut up. Yes, ma'am. After they finished eating, they were just casually talking, but while they were talking, Peter and Gwen were communicating with Morse code by slightly knocking on the table while pretending to just be boredly drumming on it. What really happened? Gwen tapped. Harry slapped my back. Peter responded. Are you okay? Gwen tapped while giving Peter a concealed worrying look. Yeah, don't worry, although he found out about us and who we are. Shit. Shit indeed. What are we going to do then? I was planning on taking him to the hideout. Really? Isn't it like our sanctuary for the two of us? It is. Peter gave Gwen a nervous look. Gwen rolled her eyes. I mean, we've known Harry since we were little, so I don't mind if he comes by. But don't make it where he comes every day and interrupts our time along. Peter nodded his head. Gwen then reminded Peter, don't forget we have detention. Shit, I forgot about that. The bell then soon rang and they started walking out of the cafeteria, while Peter and Gwen were walking in front of everyone. They failed to notice someone behind them looking at them weirdly. Felicia, who was a bit behind with MJ, looked at Peter's back, then looked between Harry, Peter, and Gwen. Just what were they hiding that they needed to talk in Morse code? What happened to Peter's back that Gwen had to make sure if he was alright, and they have a secret hideout, seriously? Just who are they? Felicia muttered to herself. What? MJ, who was next to her, asked. Nothing, just talking to myself, Felicia said while shaking her head. Chapter 44. Third person's POV. When the final bell rang and everyone started leaving, Peter leaned over to Harry and whispered, meet us by the abandoned subway by old Jeffrey's place in an hour. You mean that old convenience store that shut down and we used to hang out around when we were little? Harry asked with a lifted brow. Harry then shrugged his shoulders, sure, I'll be there. After they all left, both Gwen and Peter had to go to detention. They went and sat in an empty classroom where a teacher just lazily sat down and read his book. As both Peter and Gwen sat down, the teacher grabbed a small TV remote and turned on a box TV. Peter almost banged his head on the table when he saw who appeared on it. It was Steve Rogers, giving his usual lecture while pointing his finger. Every time they would get into trouble and would have to go into detention, they would always play the same video. I swear when I see him it's on sight, Peter. After a long 45 minutes, Gwen was to the point of throwing the table at the teacher and dealing with the consequences later. The teacher looked up from his book and looked at his watch. He then looked at Peter and Gwen in confusion. What are you two still doing here? Your detention ended 15 minutes ago. What? They both shouted beyond past. Yeah, I mean normally detention for you guys would be over in 40 minutes. But I know the two of you are good kids and are in the top of your class, so I just have you for 30 minutes, didn't I say that? No. Both Peter and Gwen shouted. Teacher blinked for a few seconds before shrugging his shoulders. Oh well. Oh well. Peter said and repeated, oh well. He was about to move towards the teacher. I'll show you oh well when I shove my fist up your dash. Before Peter could finish, Gwen covered his move and shook her head. Let's just go, we have somewhere to be, remember. Peter grumbled before the two of them left running out of the school. They went and rode onto their bikes and rode on their way to meet Harry. Once they arrived, they saw Harry coming out of a car and the driver driving away. They got off their own bikes and walked up to Harry. Harry looked at Gwen and asked, I couldn't ask before in front of our friends, but are you? Gwen sighed but nodded head. Awesome, Harry said, pretty excited at the idea of getting superpowered close friends. He then looked around and asked, so what are we doing here? Both Gwen and Peter put their bikes over their shoulder and said, followed us. They led Harry over to the bottom in front of what used to look like a subway tunnel entrance, except it was sealed off with cement. Cool wall, Harry said. Which made both Peter and Gwen scoff at him. Have you seen Harry Potter? Peter asked. Yeah. Harry said, unsure of why that was relevant. Both Gwen and Peter looked at each and smirked. They both took off running, which left Harry flabbergasted. Wait, the wall, Harry yelled when he saw that they weren't stopping. But instead of crashing into the wall, both Peter and Gwen just ran right through it, leaving Harry to look with his mouth wide open. Peter poked his head out from the wall as he asked, well, aren't you coming in? Which made Harry smirk and take off running. He closed his eyes instinctively when he got close and ran right through. When he opened his eyes, it was like he was in a brand new world. Peter smirked as he said, welcome to Hogwarts. Just what is this? Harry said, looking at everything in awe. Peter laid his bike to the side and spread out his arms while walking a bit in front. Welcome to the underground web space, our superhero secret hideout. Did you seriously build a superhero hideout? Harry said, still in a state of shock, unbelieving what he was seeing. It wasn't always a superhero hideout, it just recently got this makeover, Gwen added. We anonymously bought this area recently, although it took almost all of our savings, and started to really start upgrading everything. They then led Harry into the room where Arnie's servers are, which they use the area for testing and things like what. This is mostly where the magic happens. It used to be smaller, but since we bought this place we decided to break a few walls and expand. Oh, and Harry meet Arnie and Arnie meet Harry. Good afternoon, Mr. Osborn, Arnie said, appearing on the big monitor. Ah, Hello to you too, Harry replied while looking between Peter and Arnie on the screen. Peter just looked at Harry's reaction and looked really smug. I know, I'm a genius, the only thing stopping me from reaching enlightenment is my mortal shell. Harry rolled his eyes and saw something at the corner of his eyes. Is that a dryer and a washing machine? Harry said, making sure what he was seeing was right. Out of everything, that's what got your attention. Not the high-tech lab, my beautiful daughter, all the weird-looking chemicals on the shelf, but the washing machine. Peter said while looking at Harry in disbelief. I mean, yeah, Harry then looked at Peter weirdly. What kind of secret hideout/lab has a washing machine just sitting right there? The one where you sometimes come home with blood clothes and don't want to explain it to your aunt or uncle, so you need a secret place to clean it. Wait, Aunt May and Uncle Ben don't know your identities? Harry asked with a head tilt. Didn't I say you were the first person to know? Yeah, but I thought it was like between friends. So I'm like the first one ever know. Yup, even if it was unintentional, Peter said. Which made Harry put an awkward expression. Right. I forgot about that part. I was planning on telling Aunt May and Uncle Ben first, then Gwen's dad, way later down the line, you and MJ, but Peter said, shrugging his shoulders. It really doesn't matter in which order you found out. Peter added. Gwen then came out of a new installed room to the right, that would be later used to keep other suits, wearing her ghost spider costume. When she came out, she pointed to Harry and said, don't let him go out there, he's still injured. Although he'll heal, I don't want him going out today. Harry made a military salute as he said, yes ma'am. Gwen nodded and pulled down her mask and exited the hideout. As she was leaving, Harry noticed something else and walked up to it. After examining it for a bit, he asked, you have a pet spider? That's actually the spider that gave me power, I named him Daddy Long Legs. Peter said while touching his chest and sounding touched. Harry turned and looked at Peter with a deadpan expression. Really? Peter just nodded proudly. He then thought about something for a minute and said, hold up, and went to the room where Gwen came out. While Peter was doing his thing, Harry started exploring the entire room. He stood in front of a shelf with weird chemicals and started reading the labels. Dissolving acid. Harry read out loud. Peter then came out after a few seconds with what he wrapped around in the school bathroom and with a damaged spider suit. He ripped the webs slightly and put the bloody clothes and suit inside the washer and put the bloody up webs, alongside a piece of bloody metal in a container. He then went and grabbed the dissolving acid and poured it in there, destroying everything. What was that for? Harry asked, confused. We don't know who is out there just waiting to get a hand on our blood, so we destroy every piece of evidence we get, Peter explained. Are there really people out there trying to get your blood? Harry asked worriedly. Peter nodded his head, more than you could ever think possible. Chapter 44. Third person's POV. When the final bell rang and everyone started leaving, Peter leaned over to Harry and whispered, meet us by the abandoned subway by old Jeffrey's place in an hour. You mean that old convenience store that shut down and we used to hang out around when we were little? Harry asked with a lifted brow. Harry then shrugged his shoulders. Sure, I'll be there. After they all left, both Gwen and Peter had to go detention. They went and sat in an empty classroom where a teacher just lazily sat down and read his book. As both Peter and Gwen sat down, the teacher grabbed a small TV remote and turned on a box TV. Peter almost banged his head on the table when he saw who appeared on it. It was Steve Rogers, giving his usual lecture while pointing his finger. Every time they would get into trouble and would have to go into detention, they would always play the same video. I swear when I see him it's on sight, Peter. After a long 45 minutes, Gwen was to the point of throwing the table at the teacher and dealing with the consequences later. The teacher looked up from his book and looked at his watch. He then looked at Peter and Gwen in confusion. What are you two still doing here? Your detention ended 15 minutes ago. What? They both shouted beyond past. Yeah, I mean normally detention for you guys would be over in 40 minutes. But I know the two of you are good kids and are in the top of your class, so I just have you for 30 minutes, didn't I say that? No. Both Peter and Gwen shouted. Teacher blinked for a few seconds before shrugging his shoulders. Oh well. Oh well. Peter said and repeated, oh well. He was about to move towards the teacher. I'll show you oh well when I shove my fist up your dash. Before Peter could finish, Gwen covered his move and shook her head. Let's just go, we have somewhere to be, remember. Peter grumbled before the two of them left, running out of the school. they went and rode onto their bikes and rode on their way to meet Harry. Once they arrived, they saw Harry coming out of a car and the driver driving away. They got off their own bikes and walked up to Harry. Harry looked at Gwen and asked, "I couldn't ask before in front of our friends, but are you?" Gwen sighed but nodded head. "Awesome," Harry said, pretty excited at the idea of getting superpowered close friends. He then looked around and asked, "So what are we doing here?" Both Gwen and Peter put their bikes over their shoulder and said, "Followed us." They led Harry over to the bottom in front of what used to look like a subway tunnel entrance, except it was sealed off with cement. "Cool wall," Harry said. Which made both Peter and Gwen scoff at him. "Have you seen Harry Potter?" Peter asked. "Yeah," Harry said, unsure of why that was relevant. Both Gwen and Peter looked at each and smirked. They both took off running, which left Harry flabbergasted. "Wait, the wall," Harry yelled when he saw that they weren't stopping. But instead of crashing into the wall, both Peter and Gwen just ran right through it, leaving Harry to look with his mouth wide open. Peter poked his head out from the wall as he asked, "Well, aren't you coming in?" Which made Harry smirk and take off running. He closed his eyes instinctively when he got close and ran right through. When he opened his eyes, it was like he was in a brand new world. Peter smirked as he said, "Welcome to Hogwarts." "Just what is this?" Harry said, looking at everything in awe. Peter laid his bike to the side and spread out his arms while walking a bit in front. "Welcome to the underground web space, our superhero secret hideout." "Did you seriously build a superhero hideout?" Harry said, still in a state of shock, unbelieving what he was seeing. "It wasn't always a superhero hideout, it just recently got this makeover," Gwen added. "We anonymously bought this area recently, although it took almost all of our savings, and started to really start upgrading everything." They then led Harry into the room where Arnie's servers are, which they use the area for testing and things like what. "This is mostly where the magic happens. It used to be smaller, but since we bought this place we decided to break a few walls and expand." "Oh, and Harry meet Arnie and Arnie meet Harry." "Good afternoon, Mr. Osborn," Arnie said, appearing on the big monitor. "Ah, hello to you too," Harry replied while looking between Peter and Arnie on the screen. Peter just looked at Harry's reaction and looked really smug. I know, I'm a genius, the only thing stopping me from reaching enlightenment is my mortal shell." Harry rolled his eyes and saw something at the corner of his eyes. Is that a dryer and a washing machine?" Harry said, making sure what he was seeing was right. "Out of everything, that's what got your attention?" "Not the high-tech lab, my beautiful daughter, all the weird-looking chemicals on the shelf, but the washing machine," Peter said while looking at Harry in disbelief. "I mean, yeah," Harry then looked at Peter weirdly. "What kind of secret hideout/lab has a washing machine just sitting right there?" "The one where you sometimes come home with blood clothes and don't want to explain it to your aunt or uncle, so you need a secret place to clean it." "Wait, Aunt May and Uncle Ben don't know your identities?" Harry asked with a head tilt. "Didn't I say you were the first person to know?" "Yeah, but I thought it was like between friends." "So I'm like the first one ever know?" "Yup, even if it was unintentional," Peter said. Which made Harry put an awkward expression. "Right. I forgot about that part. I was planning on telling Aunt May and Uncle Ben first, then Gwen's dad, way later down the line you and MJ, but Peter said, shrugging his shoulders. "It really doesn't matter in which order you found out," Peter added. Gwen then came out of a new installed room to the right, that would be later used to keep other suits, wearing her ghost spider costume. When she came out, she pointed to Harry and said, "Don't let him go out there, he's still injured. Although he'll heal, I don't want him going out today." Harry made a military salute as he said, "Yes, ma'am." Gwen nodded and pulled down her mask and exited the hideout. As she was leaving, Harry noticed something else and walked up to it. After examining it for a bit, he asked, "You have a pet spider?" "That's actually the spider that gave me power, I named him Daddy Long Legs," Peter said while touching his chest and sounding touched. Harry turned and looked at Peter with a deadpan expression. "Really?" Peter just nodded proudly. He then thought about something for a minute and said, "Hold up," and went to the room where Gwen came out. While Peter was doing his thing, Harry started exploring the entire room. He stood in front of a shelf with weird chemicals and started reading the labels. "Dissolving acid," Harry read out loud. Peter then came out after a few seconds with what he wrapped around in the school bathroom and with a damaged spider suit. He ripped the webs slightly and put the bloody clothes and suit inside the washer and put the bloody up webs, alongside a piece of bloody metal in a container. He then went and grabbed the dissolving acid and poured it in there, destroying everything. What was that for? Harry asked, confused. We don't know who is out there just waiting to get a hand on our blood, so we destroy every piece of evidence we get, Peter explained. Are there really people out there trying to get your blood? Harry asked worriedly. Peter nodded his head, more than you could ever think possible. Chapter 45. Third person's POV. Dr. Connors was seen over his desk with papers everywhere scattered around, his hair disheveled, little stubbles growing around his mouth, sunken eyes. Looking like he was about to collapse any minute now. I've done everything I can, Dr. Connors whispered to himself. I've used the axolotl as a subbase and all it did was give the rats external gills that let them breathe underwater. I have to get more. Who cares if they're endangered? My career is endangered as well. I have to be quick, the black market is almost sold out of them. They're becoming harder and harder to get. Shit, Dr. Connors kept muttering to himself. ShiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiiWhile breathing heavily he looked towards all the mess he created and saw a frame lying there with broken glass all around. He sighed, trying to calm himself down, and went and picked up the frame. In it was a picture of his wife and child smiling happily. It was almost taunting. He lets out a tired sigh and sits down in the middle of all the scattered papers. He then softly started caressing the picture as he whispers to him, just what am I going to do? How am I going to support you guys if I fail? He sighed once again and started cleaning up everything. Once he was done, he started looking at his journal entry. He started writing out. *** journal entry, Dr. Connors ***. Date, March 3, 2007 ***. Today marks another day in the pursuit of a breakthrough in genetic hybridization. My ambition to combine the genetic material of a lizard with that of an axolotl has been a persistent challenge. The implications of such a fusion could revolutionize regenerative medicine, offering new insights into tissue regeneration and healing properties. Initially, the idea seemed far-fetched, almost whimsical, but as I delved deeper into the respective DNA structures of the lizard and axolotl, parallels emerged. Both creatures possess remarkable regenerative capabilities, albeit on different scales and mechanisms. In my earlier attempts, the genetic sequences I spliced failed to merge harmoniously. The lizard's robustness and resilience clashed with the axolotl's regenerative prowess. Each time, I refined the process, adjusting recombination techniques and meticulously analyzing the DNA to identify the crucial elements responsible for regeneration. Several weeks into this endeavor, I observed promising preliminary results. Small-scale cellular experiments showed signs of successful integration, with tissues exhibiting initial regeneration patterns akin to the axolotl. Optimism surged within me as I expanded the scale of my experiments, moving from cellular to organismal levels. The breakthrough appeared imminent. Signs of hybridization emerged in the first experimental subjects. Encouraged by the initial positive responses, I further refined the genetic makeup, aiming for a perfect blend of both species' regenerative capacities. Excitement filled the laboratory as we monitored the subjects' progress, hoping for a successful integration of traits. However, as the days passed, anomalies began to surface. Instead of the expected synthesis of lizard resilience and axolotl regenerative properties, the organisms displayed unpredictable mutations. Limbs sprouted in odd places, and tissue growth became uncontrollable and misshapen. It was as if the DNA had rebelled against the imposed amalgamation, rejecting the forced union of these distinct species' genetic codes. Disheartenment and frustration settled in as my hopes crumbled. Despite meticulous adjustments and seemingly promising progress, the final outcome was a deviation from the intended fusion. The genetic structure I thought had succeeded turned out to be an unstable, aberrant hybrid, far from what I had envisioned. It's disheartening to acknowledge that despite the closeness I felt to achieving this groundbreaking fusion, the ultimate failure has left me questioning the feasibility of such a genetic merger. As a scientist, I understand the importance of setbacks in the pursuit of knowledge, yet this disappointment feels particularly profound. Nonetheless, this setback won't deter me. The quest for understanding and pushing the boundaries of genetic hybridization continues. I will re-evaluate my methods, analyze the data meticulously, and persist in this pursuit of merging lizard and axolotl DNA, for the potential benefits it could offer to science and humanity are too significant to abandon. I just wished I had more time. Sigh. Dr. Connors lowered his head. I just got 1 week left. I have to make it count for something. Dr. Connors slapped his cheek and started getting to work. Gwen was seen swinging through the city all alone without Peter, Arnie, any crime or help needed. But before Arnie could say anything, Gwen saw a little kid running towards the streets chasing after a ball and a car a couple feet away driving down the road. Arnie, fast webs, Gwen demanded. She used her web shooters and shot a web that flew fast and stuck onto the kid. Gwen pulled on the web, pulling the kid back as the car almost ran him over, making the kid land but first on the floor. The car came to a screeching halt, but luckily the kid was already out of harm's way. Even if the car stopped, it would have still hit the kid. Luckily Gwen was at the right place in time. Gwen quickly landed and started lecturing the kid. Hey, that was very dangerous, you could have gotten yourself killed. The kid looked like he was still in shock after almost dying, so Gwen couldn't stay mad at him. She crouched down to the kid's eye leave and said, "Here, I want you to pinky promise me something. Can you do it?" Gwen asked while sticking out her pinky. The kid nodded with tears in his eyes and wrapped his pinky around hers. "Now then, repeat after me. I pinky promise to look both ways before crossing the streets. I pinky promise to look both ways before crossing the streets," the boy softly recited with a now growing blush on his face. Gwen smirked as she nodded her head. She started ruffling the little boy's hair as she stood up. "Good, don't forget it, okay? After all, it's a pinky promise." The little boy, who still had his pinky out, nodded his head with the blush being present. Gwen then turned and shot her web towards the ball across the street and handed it to the kid. "Here, I think you dropped something." As she handed him the ball, she saw a woman come running down towards him with a worried look. Gwen pointed towards her and said, "Look, I think your mother is coming." "Well, Imma, go, I have people to save. Later, kid." Gwen then webbed away. Meanwhile, the boy's mother came and wrapped him into a hug. "I saw what happened. You said you wouldn't cross the streets without permission or an adult supervision." The mother saw that the kid wasn't paying attention and just had a kind of bewildered look while holding out a pinky and holding the ball on his other hand. "Well, what do you have to say for yourself, mister?" "I think I'm in love," the boy muttered, catching the mother by surprise. "What?" "All right, Arnie, what's the agenda?" Gwen asked while swinging. "There are currently 2 police car chase happening simultaneously, going in opposite directions. Okay, here's what we'll do. Tell me which one is the most dangerous one and we'll take care of that one first, while you keep track of the other one. We have to improvise since Spider-Man isn't available. The most dangerous one is the one in the opposite direction, getting further away from you." "Of course it is," Gwen muttered, turning around chasing after it. Chapter 46. Third person's POV. Gwen was swinging towards the speeding car that at a fast pace. While swinging, she asked, "Okay, Arnie, what's dangerous about this police chase?" "Based on the police report I've been able to gather, the reason the car is speeding is due to a bomb tied to its speed. If it stops, the bomb would go off." "I see, so it has no choice but to go fast." "I'm on it," Gwen said as she picked up the speed. She started skating alongside the buildings to increase her speed. After a few minutes, Gwen was able to catch up to the car. She got on top of the roof of a police car that was chasing it and knocked on the window of the driver. "Are you crazy? Get off from there. Can't you see we're busy?" Gwen rolled her eyes. "Yeah, I see that. I'm just here to warn you. I'm going to go up there and freeze the bomb." Gwen didn't stick around. She shot her webs towards the car in front of her and pulled herself on top of the roof. She knocked on the window, causing the female driver to lower the window. "Please help me," she cried with tears flowing down her face. "I'm just here to reassure you that everything would be all right." Gwen then crawled to the side of the car and looked under it. Under the car, the bomb was with a speedometer going at 120 miles per hour with flashing red lights. Gwen shot a web towards it and brought it to her hands. Once it was in her hands, she used her ice abilities to completely freeze the bomb, stopping it from exploding temporarily. When she was done, she informed the woman driving, "You can stop now." The woman let out an audible sigh of relief, which was followed by crying tears of joy. Thank you a million times," she said as she started slowing down and stopping at the side of the road, which the police followed promptly after. Gwen got off of the car and took the bomb towards the police. As she approached, the police all took out their guns and aimed it at Gwen. "You are under arrest. Drop the bomb now." "What?" Gwen shouted. "I was just going to give it to you." One of the police officers, while pointing his gun at Gwen, reached for his radio and said, "We are requesting backup. We have the vigilante in sight. She is currently in possession of a weapon threatening us as we speak." "What? No, I'm not. I just saved that woman's life," Gwen yelled as she took a step forward, but as she did a police officer fired a warning shot by her feet. Take another step and we would have to engage, surrender peacefully, or be prepared for the consequences. Gwen killed her tongue. You know what, fuck this. She laid the bomb on the ground, and as she did the police officers started firing at her, which she easily dodged. She took a running start before swinging away. While swinging, the police started firing at her, which she once again dodged using her spidey senses. While swinging, Gwen said, "Arnie called Spider-Man." After a few seconds in the corner of her eye, Peter's image appeared alongside him. Harry stood with a smirk on his face. "You ghost spider, what's swinging?" Peter said with a satisfied expression, finally able to use that quid. Harry chuckled at that and patted Peter's shoulder. "Nice one." "I know, right?" Peter smirked as he briefly looked at Harry. "Anyways, what's wrong?" Peter asked. Gwen sighed as she just said, "It's better if I showed you." Arnie sent him a clip of what just happened. While Gwen made her way towards the other car chase that was her opposite direction, Peter and Harry watched the video Arnie sent over. "The hell," the both said at the same time. "What do you think is going on?" Harry asked. "Someone is probably trying to tarnish our reputation and name," Peter guessed while reviewing the clips. "Huh? Why would they do that?" Gwen asked as she swung. Harry had to look away to not get dizzy from watching Gwen's camera angles. "I can think of many reasons actually. Now for the most likely reason I don't know, we have to find that out. But it looks like they were willing to plant false evidence and get us incriminated," Peter said, rewinding the clip and watching it again. "Is there a way to fix it? If they keep damaging your reputations, then it'll be really difficult to do your superhero thing." "Ah, that's actually quite easy. You see, ever since we have built the masks, Arnie has always been recording everything. Which is something no one knows. I'll just make a Spider-Man YouTube channel where everyone can watch our daily activities and reasonably less gory fights. They will be able to know and tell that we actually haven't done anything wrong, and that we're being falsely accused." "I see," Harry said with a hand on his chin, thinking of all the benefits this could bring. "When are you going to implement it?" Gwen asked. As she approached a high-speed chase, as she got close she noticed that there weren't any guns involved and it was just a casual chase. "What's going on, Arnie?" "It appears to be a chase of an adrenaline junkie." "Really? That's it?" Harry asked, hoping to see more action. Peter just scoffed and chuckled at that. "What do you think this was? An action movie or something? This is what most days are like, people doing stupid things and we coming along to save them." Gwen chuckled at that as she went and started webbing the wheels of the car, slowing it down until it came to a complete stop. She didn't stay and talk to the cops in case a similar incident like what happened previously happened. "Reminds me of the time we had to save an employee from a store since he slept on the job and got stuck inside," Gwen said, looking for anything she could do to help. "Or the time someone got stuck in a giant bowl that was used for advertisements and couldn't get out," Peter added. Harry looked confused. "So you're not fighting like supervillains all the time?" Peter looked at Harry like he was crazy, and where would they come out from? "The only supervillain we have at the moment is Sandman. You would have most probably have heard of us fighting supervillains if they appeared like every day." Harry then grew embarrassed for asking that. Peter turned towards Harry and gave him a teasing smirk. "What is superhero ing not what it's cracked up to be? I honestly thought they would have been more action if I'm being honest." Peter shrugged his shoulders. "Well, it is a slow day today. Actually want to see the fight with Sandman." "Hell yeah I do," Harry said enthusiastically. Gwen groaned, "Ugh boys. Arnie, hang up the call. Show me all the cool action shots you got," Harry said excitedly. "After the Sandman fight, let me show you." And Gwen and I jumped from the World Trade Center. Which left Harry in shock and becoming even more excited to watch everything. Chapter 47. Harry's POV. The last thing I ever expected to find out was that my best friend was the new and upcoming superhero alongside his girlfriend. Honestly, I don't even know how to really feel about that. I mean, for one, I'm proud of him. Not that I'll ever tell him to his face. Hell would have to freeze over first before that happens. It's been 2 days since I've found out, and at first I thought it would have been more crazy or they would have been more different than how they normally were, but nope, they're still the same as always. Which is nice to know, though I've only known for 2 days, so who knows what might happen. Peter has healed up now and Gwen has allowed him to go do their duties. Luckily for me, Peter allowed me to be the guy in the chair. It's nice that they didn't immediately tell me to stay away to keep me safe. As I made my way inside their secret lair, I said hello to Peter's AI, which I can't believe how lifelike he made it. I better be friendly in case it revolts, it might spare me. As I sat down I asked, "Hey Arnie, what are they up to today?" "Currently they're chasing after a car chase," Arnie reported. "Seriously? Again? Doesn't this get tedious or annoying constantly doing the same thing over and over again?" Auto theft and chase are known to be the most common types of crime, so they are likely to occur more often, Arnie informed me. Makes sense. Seeing them in action just made me realize something which should have been quite obvious from the beginning: they don't find this tedious, and I don't think they ever will. They don't see what they're doing, they see who they're helping. To them they could repeat the action a million times and still find joy doing it since they helped someone, whether they appreciated it or not. They're so cool. I couldn't help but mutter, I couldn't have been more glad to call them my friends. I quickly shook my head to stop myself from thinking about such sappy thoughts. Instead of just sitting around, I decided to do something productive. I started checking out the video Peter uploaded. "Arnie, how's Peter video doing?" "It currently has 1 million views and still rising." "Whoa, already? Just how high is their popularity?" Arnie was about to say, but I quickly interrupted. "Sorry, you don't have to answer that, it was more of a rhetorical question." My pride couldn't have taken such answers. I joked to myself, while shaking my head. "But still 1 million views when he literally uploaded the video yesterday," I said in disbelief. "Does Peter have the next video ready?" Rhetorical question. "No, Arnie, genuine question this time. Sorry for cutting you off earlier. For some reason I just felt the need to apologize. Seriously Pete, what the hell did you create? You are forgiving, since you are Father's best friend. Father's next video is ready for upload. And if I wasn't? Is that a threat? Is Peter sure this thing is safe? What happened to the 3 laws all robots must follow? Why isn't it uploaded yet? Father said he likes to be present when doing small things like this." "I see. No, I don't, but sure. Can I watch it?" Arnie then opened a tab on the side monitor and started playing a video of Peter and Gwen stopping an armored truck, which looked dope. As Arnie was showing the video, I noticed a file to the side that said, "Everyday file." Ah, that must be where the video goes after he made the masks. He did say that the mask has been recording everything ever since it was made. I click on the folder and make my way to the videos until I reach the very last one, which is most likely the first video. He's been doing this for 2 months now, hasn't he? I click on the video and listen while watching Peter and Gwen live on the big screen. "Hey Gwen, catch," Peter's voice was heard from my side, causing me to turn and look at the video and saw Peter throw something at Gwen. Gwen looked at the thing in her hand in confusion, which Peter caught on and explained. "They're web shooters. I started working on yours since we got our powers 2 weeks ago." Gwen continued look at it in confusion. "Why would we need them? We make our own webs." "They can." That's news to me. "It's in case we run out of our own webs, who knows what might happen. These are in case of emergencies, though I did add different kinds of webs, like taser webs, impact webs, web grenades, anything that could be useful." "Whoa, you thought of these all in 2 weeks while we were practicing how to use our powers?" "No, I just made yours in 2 weeks, the rest was a project I started when I was little." "Right, your obsession with spiders, how could I ever forget? Isn't this all really a bit coincidence, you having an obsession with spiders and then we end up developing the powers of a spider?" "Ha!" Laughed. Peter did always have an obsession with spiders. I wonder why. But she's right, it's all really suspiciously coincidental. I previously mentioned that my parents died and were in a plane accident and that they were scientists. This is one of the reasons Peter was a good friend. He understood my pain when Mom died better than anyone. When he said, "Sorry about your mom's death," I knew it wasn't from pity like everyone else's but from experience. That wasn't everything, there's more to it that I haven't told you and the others, Peter in the video continued, much to my shock, almost mimicking Gwen. Now that he mentioned it, the way they died wasn't explained much except that they died in a plane crash, I thought while paying close attention. "You see, my parents used to work as scientists, something you already know. And while working they were experimenting and testing on the serum that turned Captain America into the super soldier that he is. I guess they were trying to create their own or improve on it. They thought that for it to improve it would be better if it was mixed along with animals. The latest animal they were working on were spiders. They got really far into the project. But here's the thing, the person who they were working for is sick. Their boss thought that this would be his cure, so he wanted to move towards human experimentation. Which was something my parents were highly against. They were going to be forced into accepting it, by involving their families, so they decided to run away before they discovered who the family was. By running away they would be able to hide for a while and protect their family. Peter said, much to my shock, "This feels wrong. It feels like I'm listening to something I shouldn't." Peter then sighed and continued, "I remember the last time I saw my mom and dad, they were in a panic." Peter then started explaining what happened when he last saw them. Their plane then, mysteriously, got into an accident. But it wasn't an accident, it was a hit. Basically a retrieval mission for their research and to silence them, and that's where my obsession with spiders comes from. It's something my parents last researched. It makes me feel closer to them when I start studying them. It was a hit, an assassination, but who was it? I thought with gritted teeth and clenched fist. Gwen had her hands cover her mouth from the shock she was experiencing. When Peter finished she went up and wrapped Peter in a tight hug. "Oh Peter." When she broke the hug she asked, "So do you know who this boss is, the one who murdered your parents?" I started to pay even more attention so as to not miss the name. Peter just gave her a sad smile and asked, "Gwen, by what did we get bit by and where did it happen?" "Didn't Peter say it happened in OS?" Gwen scrounged her face in confusion. "We were bite by enhanced spider at OS." "No," Gwen said, placing her hands near her mouth again. "Oscorp," she was gonna say Oscorp. Exactly where Peter said they got bit. "Dad, my father, he killed his parents." I can feel myself start to panic. My breathing is getting involuntarily heavy and faster. Peter knew it was my dad. Of course he knew, he was always smart. Was he lying all this time? Was he really my friend? My best friend? Was this a ploy to get close to me, to my dad, to kill him? Is he planning to kill me too once he's done? Has our whole friendship been a lie? Chapter 48. Third person's POV. Harry paused the video. He couldn't do it. He couldn't listen anymore to what they were saying. All he knew was that he had to get out of there no matter what. His father killed his best friend's parents. Surely Peter hated him. He had to. There is just no other explanation. Harry stood up and grabbed his bag and started walking towards the door. When he got there he tried to twist the doorknob but it wouldn't budge. Shit, Harry thought while slamming his shoulder on the door, but it wouldn't budge until he heard a voice behind him. "Escaping is futile, Harry Osborn," Arnie said, replacing the live stream of Peter and Gwen. Harry turned around frightened. He pressed his back against the door trying to create as much distance between Arnie and him. "Are you the reason the doors are not opening?" Harry asked with a bit of edge in his tone of voice. "That's right," Arnie said, her holographic face expressing a smile. "Why? Please just let me leave, okay? I won't bother Peter ever again, okay? Hell, I'll even change school, so please let me go." Arnie stayed silent, before unexpectedly releasing a sigh, which just freaked out Harry even more. "I see why humans sigh now. It's a great tension reliever," Arnie said before continuing. "Don't misunderstand, Harry Osborn. The reason I'm preventing you from leaving is to fix the misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding? What misunderstanding? You mean the one where my father killed Peter's mom and dad?" Harry said sarcastically. "No, I'm talking about the misunderstanding where you believe your entire friendship with father has been a lie." "So you watched all that, huh?" Harry asked with a weary expression. "Well, I wouldn't exactly call your panic attack something silent and easy to ignore," Arnie sarcastically said. "Great, I'm being made fun of by an AI. My life couldn't be any better," Harry thought irritatingly. "Just what is there to misunderstand? My father killed his parents and he hates me. What's there to not understand? Maybe if you stop talking and sit down and finish the video, then maybe you would understand," Arnie said, slightly annoyed with him now. Harry's cheek grew red from embarrassment and grumbled as he made his way back to the chair in front of the big monitor. He laid down his backpack on the ground next to it and sat down with a sigh. Arnie just looked at him and said, "If I had eyes I would be rolling them at you at this moment." "Geez, thanks a lot," Harry said sarcastically as he used the mouse to move the video to the big monitor. Before resuming the video Harry grew nervous, so he decided to stall for time. He doesn't know for what, but he was too nervous to care. Why didn't you stop me from watching the video? Isn't that supposed to be something private? Because I wasn't programmed to. I was programmed to follow all of my creator's wishes. My father/creator didn't say to stop you from going through the archives, and he didn't put a password on the files. Arnie explained. But aren't you supposed to assume and make guesses on what Peter would like you to do? No, I wasn't programmed to. Making assumptions goes against everything I've been programmed to do. What if I make a mistake and assume something wrong and make Father unhappy? That would be the last thing I would want. So I follow whatever Father says and only what Father says. Nothing else matters, only Father's decisions matter. Okay, Harry says, I shouldn't have asked that. What the hell just happened? Harry then sighed and pressed play on the video and closed his eyes, prepared to hear the worst. With his eyes closed, Harry heard Peter's voice. Why do you think I stop you from interning there at every chance we get? I see. I thought it was weird that she didn't. She previously said she was looking for a place to intern but didn't go to Oscorp. It was the perfect place for her to go to as well, so Peter stopped her. It makes sense. I wouldn't want someone close to me to be anywhere near the person that killed my parents as well. Harry thought before slowly peeking and squinting his eyes. Harry saw Gwen looked shocked at what Peter said. She then went and asked the question Harry dreaded to hear. So you mean to say that Norman Osborn killed your mom and dad? But aren't you friends with Harry? Harry unconsciously started clenching his fist. He stared at the screen, looking expectantly at the screen. Even though he was scared to know what Peter was going to say, he gained hope. Arnie's words early gave him hope. Why did she say it was all a misunderstanding? Maybe Peter didn't hate him. Harry saw Peter just shrugged his shoulder. I tried to hate him honestly, I really did, but I can't really blame him for something his father did. That just seems stupid. Harry looked at the screen in shock as it paused on its own, probably due to Arnie. Harry felt all the tension leave his body as he leaned back on the chair he was sitting on. So it really was a misunderstanding on my part, Harry whispered to himself. Told you so, Arnie said sassily. Yes, you wise ultra-intelligent AI, Harry sarcastically said while rolling his eyes. As long as you know, Arnie said while appearing on the screen, nodding her holographic head. Harry just shook his head and grabbed his bag and stood up to leave, and as he put a hand on the doorknob he turned towards Arnie and asked. Can I leave now? I'm not stopping you, Arnie said. Harry scoffed. Why do I feel like if she had shoulders she would be shrugging them? Harry then turned the doorknob and opened the door, which caused him to let out a sigh of relief. I guess I'll see you later. Oh, can you not tell Peter that I know what happened? I have a lot to think about. I want our relationship to stay how it was without becoming awkward. I will not say anything if Father doesn't ask, but if Father asks me I'm telling right away. Arnie voiced out. Harry just shrugged his shoulders. Works for me, and left the room as he closed the door. As Harry closed the door he then pumped his fist. So my friendship with them wasn't a lie. Arnie's voice then resounded out from the speakers outside. I can still see you. Which caused Harry to grow red in the face and start power walking out of there. He got on the bike he came here with and rode away quickly, feeling extremely embarrassed. Chapter 49. Third person's POV. As Harry was riding his bike he kept thinking about what he heard. For one, he was called. He can still call Peter and Gwen his friends. On the other hand, he now has to go home to where the person that killed his best friend's parents' lives. Am I even going to see him today? Harry mumbled to himself. Ever since his mother died, his relationship with his father has begun to strain. They don't spend as much time together as they used to. He was always comparing his achievements with Peter and Gwen's, not that it bothered him, but over the years it has gotten to the point that they barely talk. Sometimes for ongoing months there would be silence between them. He really hoped his father wasn't there today, especially today of all days. His respect for his father has now plummeted to an all-time low. As he made it close to home, he started thinking about difficult scenarios in his head. Like what he would even say if his father was truly there. As he made it to his house he quietly made it inside. What are you doing, young master? Sebastian's voice suddenly appeared. Holy shit. Harry jumped back in fright. He turned towards Sebastian and asked with a hand near his heart. Did you really need to do that? You almost gave me a heart attack. You were the one that was sneaking around, young master. I had to make sure it wasn't an intruder. Harry looked at his butler with a deadpan expression before letting out a sigh. He looked at Sebastian with a bit of apprehension before asking, Is my father home today? The butler nodded his head. he pointed upstairs. The master is currently in his office in the middle of an important phone call. Harry nodded his head and started walking upstairs to his room while hiding his fists that were shaking earlier from nervousness. As he walked towards his room, he couldn't help but make a detour. He wanted to at least hear what his father was talking about. Would he feel the same way towards him hearing his voice and knowing what he's capable of now? Or will he feel the same hidden care he had towards him? He didn't know, but he wanted to find out. As Harry made it towards the door to Norman's office, he pressed his ear against and started listening to what they were saying. We couldn't have accounted for them to be recording everything. The situation with the police is most likely a bust. We would have to resort to heavy measures. Yes, I know it was a waste of money. The police were useless even with all that money we gave them. They were unable to incriminate them. No, I know that the police wouldn't have been able to capture them. That's foolish. If they were so easily caught, then we wouldn't have had any uses for them. No, it was a different plan. We were supposed to ruin their reputation, so we would be allowed to use harsher force against them and still come out okay towards the public eye. But it looks like we have to come out with our last resort tomorrow, the last day after the deadline. Yes, it's time to use the Russian mercenary. He must succeed. He must capture Spider-Man and Ghost Spider at any cost. Hail Hydra! Harry stood there shaking with fear. He slowly started walking back towards his room as his legs couldn't stop shaking. As he entered, he shut the door behind and slowly made it onto his bed. Hail Hydra! Hail Hydra! Hail Hydra! Hail Hydra! That one sentence kept repeating over and over and over in Harry's head. Isn't Hydra supposed to be the super old organization that got taken down by Captain America? Harry thought to himself. So why did my dad say it? Is it a group trying to impersonate them? No, if that was true, then my dad wouldn't have joined them. He's too smart for that. Have they reemerged and started teaming up with successful businessmen? Harry then started ruffling his hair in frustration. Shit. I guess now the mystery is solved as for what was going on with the police. They were bought, and it's all by my father. Just what is wrong with him, seriously? Why does he keep trying to mess with Peter's life one way or another? And it's not even intentional, none of them were. He doesn't know, or maybe he does know, that Peter is the son of the scientists he killed. Then there's him messing with Spider-Man and Ghost Spider. Seriously, does he have a hidden agenda or something? But I have to tell Pete, he needs to know about this. Harry went and grabbed his phone but stopped. Wait, what if they're listening to whatever I'm, so they would know who I'm talking to? Since my father is a member, they are likely keeping tabs on him. I wouldn't be surprised if my room is currently tapped with microphones or cameras. So how am I supposed to let Peter know? Meanwhile, Peter and Gwen were seen swinging across the city. Peter turned towards Gwen and asked, "Wanna try busting a drug heist? It's something we haven't done, and it's the perfect time of day to be doing this." After what happened last time with the gang? Gwen asked with a bit of apprehension. We haven't done this, and it's a good way to get over your fear of what happened. Plus, you're not alone in this one. We have each other's backs, remember? Gwen let out a sigh before free-falling and going back into swing. She appeared ahead of Peter and with serious in her voice said, "Let's do it." That's weird. Arnie, where's Harry? It's been a while since I heard him, Peter asked when he realized how Harry hasn't said a word. He is currently home as we speak, Arnie informed Peter. Any particular reason why? He was quite excited to be the guy in the chair. Did he get cold feet? He said not to tell you, father, but I only said I wouldn't tell you if you don't ask me yourself. So do you want to know, father? Peter thought about for a while before shaking his head. Harry will tell me when he's ready. Thanks for informing me. Anytime, father. Okay, Arnie. I need you to go through every police report in NYCPD. I want to know if there are any deals being made which the police can't interfere or won't have time to interfere in time. It'll take a while, father. I'll say 5 minutes max. Peter nodded his head. He turned towards Gwen. I guess we got 5 minutes to ourselves of free swinging around. Both Peter and Gwen smirked as they started competition with one another at who could do the coolest tricks. Chapter 50. Third person's POV. The winner of their little competition was Gwen, when she started swinging and doing figure skating maneuvers, leaving behind tiny little snowflakes. Peter clapped his hands as he said, "Bravo. I don't think I can beat that," but before they could continue, Arnie interrupted them. In a few hours there will be a transaction at the downtown docks. Arnie informed. And the situation with the cops? Are they going to be there? Affirmative. It looks like we will have a few hours to spare. What do you want to do? Gwen asked. Wanna just do our regular routine and wait it out? Peter asked, standing over a ledge of a rooftop. Yeah, sure, why not? Arnie, is there anything we can currently do? Gwen asked, standing right next to him. Arnie then showed them a video. It was a guy wearing a hood with his face covered, wrapping a rope to an ATM and getting inside a car and driving off, pulling the ATM from where it was sitting and driving off with it. Well, Gwen, I know what we're going to do today. Was that a Phineas and Ferb reference? Gwen asked while tilting her head. Yes, it was. Peter added proudly. Gwen just snorted as she jumped off the room with Peter following quickly behind her as they followed Arnie's directions. When they caught up, Peter noticed that the windows of the car were down and thought of an idea. He turned towards Gwen and while smirking said, "Watch this." Peter turned invisible and got on top of the car with a thump. The driver, hearing the thump, looked at his mirrors and saw Ghost Spider following a few feet behind him. Shit, can't let them catch me, he said to himself as stepped on the gas. He then looked at the mirrors again and let out a sigh of relief. It looks like I got away, he said as the tension left his body. But don't relax yet, they could still be close and chasing us. The man nodded his head but then put on a confused expression. But there was only one of them. He turned his head to say to the person next to him, and when he did he saw no one there. Wait, who was I talking to? He asked fearfully. It's me, you're conscious. We haven't talked in a while. I gotta say I'm disappointed, you haven't made any good life decisions. What? The man asked, confused and scared. Just kidding. Boo. Peter said as he undid his invisibility. The guy screamed in fright. Due to how scared he was, he started steering the wheels frantically. As the car started swerving all over the place, Peter shot a web towards the brake, pressing it down, making the car slow down. Peter moved his lead off the gas and started webbing him up in his seat. Stay right where you are and don't go anywhere. I have to make a quick withdrawal, he said as the car came to a complete stop. He got out and started swinging away. Gwen then undid her invisibility and appeared next to him, giggling. You're conscious, good one, I'm so taking that. They spent the last few hours going around and stopping all sorts of crime, until it was finally time for the drug heist. As they were swinging towards their destination, Peter asked, so how do you want to do this, just go in and take them down or a stealth attack? Stealth mode is always the best and it hasn't let me down yet, so let's go with that, Gwen said without hesitation. Says the ghost spider. Peter remarked. Oh, shut it, and let's just go, Gwen said as they approached the docks. Peter and Gwen then land on the nearest lamppost and turn invisible. A few feet ahead of them near the dock stood a warehouse with two men stationed outside with their hands in front of them standing guard. Hey, wanna try out our gadgets? We really haven't had a chance to use them before, Peter asked. Although one couldn't see it, Gwen nodded her head. Sure, can I start? Go right ahead. So which one should I use first? Gwen pondered out loud. How about the tripwire? Oh, good idea. Both Peter and Gwen have had a utility belt with the symbol of a spider right in the middle. Gwen's belt was white, with a pink spider symbol, while Peter's was blue with a red spider symbol. Gwen reached to the side of her belt and pulled out a tripwire that looked like just the one from Peter's past life Spider-Man game. She took aim and started calculating the throw and trajectory, after which she threw it like she was throwing a curveball, making it spin. As it was spinning, it landed right on the side of the thigh of the guy to the right. As the guy felt something touch his leg, he looked down towards it. What the hell is this? The guy next to him turned to look at it, but as he was turning, the tripwire went off, pulling the two together, crashing into each other. When they crashed into each other, they bonked their heads together, causing them to be unconscious. They laid webs up on the floor, not moving. Both Peter and Gwen then went taking a peek inside and saw a couple of men and women inside standing by a large delivery truck with its back towards them. There were two men standing in front of each other looking like the leader of each side. The guy on the left then starts talking. So where's all the goods? I ain't showing you shit until you show us the money, the guy on the right responded. The guy on the left turned his head to one of his boys and nodded his head towards one of his boys, who went and opened the back of the truck. Inside were stacks and stacks of cocaine and the sorts. The guy on the left then turned towards the guy on the right, turned towards a female of Asian descent and nodded his head towards her. She came in front with a briefcase, but before that they heard of something rolling on the ground towards them. When they turned and looked, they saw a red and blue ball by their feet flashing red. Their eyes widened in horror. A grenade. Get down. But before they could, the grenades exploded. But instead of an actual explosion they were waiting for, they were blasted with webs, hitting some of them and sending them flying. When they landed back on the ground they weren't able to get up as the webs kept them in place. "Shit, what the fuck is this? Get this shit off of me," screamed out the guy that was on the right, who was now on the floor. Some were able to dodge it so they weren't covered in webs and were able to get it off them. All the people that were not on the floor and webbed up, pulled out their guns and started looking and scooping the entire area but saw no one. "The hell? What is going on?" they kept saying. One of the guys that was on the floor fearfully said, it has to be spider couples, they're the only ones that use webs to do this kind of shit. Tisk, people know they can turn invisible, I bet they're here in the room as we speak, shit. They all then started pointing their guns everywhere, and as time went on they started growing impatient, so they started shooting every by the ceiling since to them that's their most likely hiding spot. Rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a. 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 What they all failed to realize, however, was that some of them were missing. Little by little their group started dwindling. "Just get me out of here already, they're most likely gone by now," the same guy who shouted earlier said while breathing heavily from shouting and frustration. "The guns must have scared them off by now," he said in a much calmer tone. As they went to untie their boss, more and more men kept disappearing without any notice until the guy there was the only one helping their boss up. For some reason, the guys on the left didn't do much, they barely even moved and just waited. Police sirens were then heard starting to surround the place. "Fuck," the guy cursed before he was suddenly struck across the face alongside his partner. The last thing he heard before being knocked out was the words of a girl. "And they say drugs are the ones hitting you unexpectedly." Gwen and Peter both undid their invisibility and high-fived each other. The woman who had the briefcase previously then interrupted their celebration. "We know you're happy, but can you get us out? We are undercover cops, and you just got in the way of a serious operation." "Huh?" Peter said and looked towards her. "And who are you?" Peter asked. "My name is Yuri Watanabe." Chapter 51. Third Person's POV. Peter looked at all the guys who were on the floor close to Yuri Watanabe and tapped the side of his mask, making Arnie scan them. Even if he knew who Yuri was from his past life, it doesn't mean he will trust that information as facts. For example, MJ is a completely different person from what she was known as in his past life, though that may be due to the influence he may have had on her being completely different and how they spent their childhood together. A/N, that's my fuck you, the people that still don't like MJ. Arnie then started showing Peter their identifications and their certifications that they do indeed belong to the police force and were undercover. When Peter saw this he nodded his head. He then went and undid his webbings. "Sorry about that, I didn't mean to put you in a sticky situation," Peter quit as he got them out. "I don't know if I should thank you or arrest you for interfering in a police investigation," the guy that was talking to the leader before spoke. "A thank you would be very much appreciated," Gwen said with a weary tone. Yuri just tapped her partner. "It's better if we leave them with a warning. They did help us out after all, even if we were slightly caught in it." The guy sighed as he said, "Very well, you guys can go off with a warning. But before that, do you guys mind getting them off the ceiling?" he said while pointing at the ceiling as some of the men were dangling on some webs. Gwen playfully smacked Peter's side as she said, "We shouldn't leave them hanging," her tone sounding playful as well. Peter snorted, "Good one." They both then shot their webs up and started to bring down the other criminals. After grouping them, Peter and Gwen hand them to the police. "We make a pretty good team," Peter said with a hidden smirk. "He's right, you guys make a great distraction. We should do this again sometime," Gwen said with a smirk hidden as well. Yuri just scoffed, "Just get out of here before we have to arrest you for real." "Yes ma'am," both of them said as they started running outside. While Yuri looked slightly offended, "Ma'am," she whispered, "am I that old that they need to call me ma'am?" The guy just next to her chuckled and shook his head before arresting everyone that wasn't arrested. As for Peter and Gwen, they did what they always do, they swung away. For most of the time nothing interesting happened. But since it was already night time, the people out there doing illegal things have risen. Meanwhile, in Dr. Connor's office. "God damn it." Connor cursed, "It's all that kid's fault, Because of him I'm behind schedule and don't have enough time to complete my regenerative serum. Why did I listen to him? Because of him I distracted myself with that stupid animal and I ended up wasting my time. Why did I think it was a good idea to mix two completely different types of animals? Now because of that idea I lost myself in it. I don't have enough time, I'm through, that's it, it's over for me. Curse that kid, Peter Parker. Dr. Connor held a green serum in his hands, that was it, all he had left. He gave it everything he had and just as he was about to put it inside a rat he stopped him. No, if it works, doing it on some rat won't achieve anything. Maybe that's the problem all this time, it was the fact the consumer was an animal. As I figured out that two animals couldn't mix, humans are more adaptive than that. Yes, humans are considered animals in their own right. That I know, don't get me wrong, but they are at a stage much higher than that of a low common animal. So the only solution would be a human experimentation, but that's very unlikely to happen. Dr. Connor at this point was on his last legs. He at this point in time started talking to himself, explaining to himself his own thought process. He looked at his own missing limb and decided it had to be him. If it works he would have taken the world forward towards human evolution. Just as he was going to give himself the injection, he stopped. It's better if I do it right on the deadline. Then I'll know I gave it everything I know. Norman was seen in his office with a phone in his hand. Is everything ready? He asked while walking back and forth. Good, the plan is in motion, you better not fail me. I have spent millions of dollars on this guy, so he better not fail me. One last time just for safety measures. Are you sure he would be able to deal with them? Based on the available footage, the Spider-Man and the Ghost Spider are considerably strong. Norman at this point in time looked nervous and hoping, if he captured them they would continue giving him what he needed, the defective super soldier serum, or in other words the SSS. If he fails it would all be taken away. He hates leaving his fate to other, it is something he despises, but he currently had no other, he was too weak to do anything himself, for now. I swear if this fails I will have your head, do I make myself clear? Good, now then tomorrow it is, tomorrow we will release, the Rhino. Chapter 52. Third person's POV. The next day, Peter and Gwen were about to enter school when Harry showed up unexpectedly. He grabbed both of them and pulled them to the side. He looked at them with a serious expression as he said, "We need to talk and it's really important, but we can't do it here in front of so many people." "What's going on?" Peter asked, gaining a serious expression as well. He hadn't seen Harry so freaked out before, so it was quite a surprise for Peter. He has no choice but to take it seriously. Harry looked around, remaining vigilant of his surroundings. He looked towards Peter and put his hands on his shoulder. "Yesterday when I was at you know where, I was checking out different videos that you had." Harry's expression then turned awkward. "I saw the video of you two talking about how my father killed your parent." Both of Gwen's and Peter's eyes widened in shock, but before they could say anything Harry continued, Peter, "I'm truly sorry for what my dad did, I truly am, and thank you for not blaming me for it and still being my friend." "You don't worry about it," Peter said, shaking his head. Gwen then looked at Harry in confusion. "Was that it? I'm not trying to be offensive or anything, but I didn't think that was worth all the panic and worry." Harry shook his head. "There's more, but I still don't think it's safe to talk it out in the open." "Then we'll talk about it in the base, Peter." Harry then shook his head, then started ruffling his hair. "Damn, this is so frustrating. All I can tell you is that my father hired some Russian mercenary to come after you guys, not you guys but the other you guys. If you know what I mean. As for the reason why he's doing this is the thing I can't say," Harry said with a frustrated expression. "You know of our strength and you worried about some Russian mercenary coming after us?" Gwen asked while looking at Harry weirdly. To which Harry nodded. "He called this guy the last resort to catch you guys." "A last resort to catch us, and that's a Russian mercenary, is it, Craven?" Peter thought with a hand on his chin. But before they could continue, MJ and Felicia appeared. "You guys having a three-way or something? Why are you guys in the corner, and if you guys are, make sure to invite me and make it a four-way," Felicia said with a teasing smirk. "Yuck," Gwen said when she heard what Felicia said and rolled her eyes. "Let's just go already, we're gonna be late to class," MJ said while also rolling her eyes at their interaction. As they were leaving, Peter turned towards Harry and mouthed, "Let's talk later," to which Harry nodded. Peter then turned towards Felicia and asked with a smirk, "About that threesome?" "Peter," Gwen reprimanded while smacking his arm. Felicia just smirked as got in between the two of them and interlocked their arms together. "Oh, are you two down?" Gwen just scoffed. "There's absolutely no way in hell I'm having my first time being taken during a threesome." Gwen quickly covers her mouth before everyone in their friend group slowly turns their head towards her direction and looks at her with their mouths wide open. Gwen's face then quickly turned red, while Felicia started laughing loudly. "No way. Seriously? You're still a virgin? I at least thought that of all us you would be the one with the experience." Felicia then got behind Gwen and started squishing her breast. "I mean, with these bad boys I would think Peter would be all over you." Harry turned his head away, not wanting to watch, while Peter's face grew slightly irritated. He karate chopped Felicia in the head, crushing her skull due to not being able to control his strength due to his irritation, causing blood and brain matter to fly everywhere, splashing on their faces and causing everyone to scream out in horror, or at least that's what happened in a completely different universe that's in the path towards its destruction. What really happened? Harry turned his head away, not wanting to watch, while Peter's face grew slightly irritated. He karate chopped Felicia in the head, causing her to let go of Gwen and hold her head in pain. "Ouchie, there's no need for that. It's not my fault you're a virgin," Felicia said while rubbing the top of her head. "I would very much appreciate it if you wouldn't start feeling up my girl." "Prude, no wonder you're a virgin," Felicia said while pouting. They continued their bantering with each other all the way until class started. They continued their day, going from classes to classes until they got to the lunchroom. As they sat down in the cafeteria, Peter and Gwen's spidey senses started going haywire. They looked at each with eyes wide open before they could anything. The floor of the lunchroom started breaking and out came a monstrosity. Roar. The monstrosity looked like a giant lizard with spikes coming down his back, a spiked tail, long claws, sharp teeth, a long tongue and 4 large spikes by his face, which actually happened to be gills. It also unexpectedly also had a lab coat on. Everyone screamed in terror and went rushing towards the exit. Everyone was pushing against each other. The giant lizard quickly scanned around the room and stopped when he turned towards Peter. "Shit," Peter thought when he noticed the lizard look into him. He turned towards Harry as he said, "Quick, take everyone to safety. I'll try and keep his attention on me." "Are you crazy?" Mary Jane and Felicia both exclaimed, but before they could protest any further, Harry took both of their hands and started dragging them out, while Peter ran the opposite direction where the lizard quickly followed. Everyone watched in amazement as Peter started running and jumping over the tables, causing the lizard to crash into them, but they didn't stay to watch. They just looked back on the scene and resumed running away. Peter started running out of tables to use as an obstacle, so he started running towards a wall, which the lizard quickly followed behind. Using his momentum, Peter ran up the wall slightly to the point it wouldn't be suspicious and back-flipped off of it, causing the lizard to slam into the wall, causing it to break and sending him out of the school. It quickly stood up and shook his head, getting rid of the debris and pain. It snapped his head towards Peter's direction, but he just saw him running away with Gwen right next to him, who unexpectedly appeared right next to him. Roar. Luckily everyone already ran away when the lizard smashed into the wall, which the lizard didn't care about as his only objective was Peter Parker. It quickly ran towards Peter and Gwen, and as it got close it sent out his claws towards their back. While that happened, their spidey senses tingled, which caused them to smirk, and as they were about to dodge they heard a voice close to them. "Look out!" MJ shouted as she came out from behind a destroyed table and got in behind Peter and Gwen with her arms spread out, using her body as a shield to protect them. Chapter 53. Third person's POV. A bit earlier. As Harry pulled Felicia and MJ, everyone kept bumping into them due to their panic, discarding everyone's safety. Due to the constant bumping, Harry accidentally let go of MJ. MJ used this opportunity and snuck through the wave of people back towards the lunchroom. MJ saw a bunch of tables being thrown around and some were destroyed, leaving big chunks of it everywhere, which she used as the perfect covers. She hid by the tables so it was able to perfectly cover her body. "Please be safe," she thought to herself while maneuvering through the broken tables as covers. She would peek through the side and watch as Peter jumped from table to table trying to stall the lizard. "He's so brave and fearless. He's just amazing," MJ thought to herself while looking at Peter's serious expression. She has no idea why she snuck back into the lunchroom, but she knew she had to. She was way too worried about Peter. She wouldn't be able to forgive herself if something happened to him while trying to distract that monster while she just ran away. But seeing the way Peter handled himself, she realized that she had nothing to worry about. "Wait, where's Gwen?" MJ thought while looking around the lunchroom. I sure hope she left with everyone and isn't doing anything dangerous like I am. Seeing nothing to worry about in the way Peter handled himself, MJ decided that it was best if she left. But due to how far she was from where she originally came from, she went towards the other exit. While making her way there, she saw something that left her stunned. She saw Peter running towards a wall and run up it slightly and backflip off of it, causing the monster to smash his head right through it, breaking the wall and going to the other side. As it did, Gwen then randomly appeared, making MJ's eyes widened in shock. Where did she come from? She thought before she quickly made her way towards the exit, following Peter and Gwen as they made their way towards the same exit. MJ then noticed the lizard come from the destroyed wall and run towards them with his claws arched back, ready to take a large swipe at them. She turned towards Peter and Gwen but just saw them smirking at each other. These idiots, they're not looking behind them. MJ quickly got out from the side of the table and yelled out, "Look out," as her body moved on its own. She stood behind them with her arms wide open to protect them with her body from the giant lizard's sharp claws. And now, when Peter heard MJ's voice, all color drained from his face as he surrounded himself with blue lightning, making the world stand to a small crawl. The lizard's claws were slowly making its way toward MJ's body. Peter reached out and grabbed MJ's arm and pulled her towards his direction, trying to save her life. If he pulled her too fast, she may suffer some whiplash, breaking her neck, killing, and if he uses too much strength, he may end up completely severing a limb. As Peter pulled on MJ, he managed to get her out of the way from being sliced in half, but not without any injuries. Instead of swiping its claws through her torso, it swiped at her back, causing blood to spay out slightly. And in slow motion, Peter saw MJ's face contort with agonizing pain, causing his pupils to dilate. As MJ's face expressed her pain, Peter threw MJ towards Gwen, making her take a hold of MJ. And as MJ was in Gwen's arm, she whispered, "Please take care of him," to Gwen's ear, and proceeded to pass out due to the high amount of pain she was experiencing. Gwen looked at MJ in shock and got frightened when she went limp in her arms. After a few seconds, she let out a sigh of relief when she felt her breathing very slowly, and proceeded to start using her first aid webs. Meanwhile, Peter ran towards the lizard and jumped in the air while spinning around to build momentum. Peter proceeded to use that momentum and kicked the lizard in the face with an angered expression, breaking off its jaw and caving his face in slightly, sending him flying, breaking through the walls and skidding across the ground, kicking up dirt. When Peter landed back on the floor, he turned towards MJ and Gwen, turning off his electricity, and ran towards the two of them, as Gwen was using her web shooters to cover her wounds. Peter then went and grabbed MJ and carried her in a princess carry, and took off running through the exit with Gwen following close behind him. As Peter turned the corner, he saw an empty classroom, which he entered alongside Gwen. Peter softly laid MJ on a table. When he did, he and Gwen proceeded to take off their clothes and grab their backpacks and put on their spider masks, while hiding their clothes inside there. Peter and Gwen then tossed their back underneath a table to keep it hidden, and as they did, the lizard suddenly appeared. He went and sprang from outside and through the window, destroying it, sending glass flying everywhere. Peter went and shielded MJ while Gwen went and shot webs towards the walls in front of her and pulled herself towards the lizard with a foot out. Gwen used the force of her pull and kicked the lizard right on his face, sending it flying back from where it came from. "I'll show you who out of the two of us is more cold-blooded," Gwen said as she made ice appear around her knuckles like a knuckle duster. Gwen jumped from the windows and shot a web towards the ground where the lizard landed, and pulled herself once again towards him and punched it in the face, sending it sliding back, destroying a couple of fangs, which just as quickly grew back in place. The lizard then got on all fours and propelled itself towards Gwen and made a slashing motion in her direction, which Gwen dodged. It made another and another and another and another and another, but Gwen, using her spidey senses, kept bopping and weaving. She then sent out an icy liver shot, causing it to roar in pain. Before going to what it was doing, trying to slash Gwen apart, after each slash Gwen would weave out of the way and send a punch right to the torso of the lizard, trying to tire it out. What Gwen didn't realize, however, was that the lizard was intentionally getting hit and slithering his tail sneakily towards Gwen. Due to it not being an attack just yet, the lizard was able to surprise Gwen by wrapping his tail around her leg. And just as it was about to swing its tail to send Gwen flying, Peter appeared. After making sure MJ wasn't hurt any further, Peter went out and saw the lizard wrap its tail around Gwen's ankle, but before the lizard could do anything else, Peter shot his webs towards Gwen's shoulder and pulled her out. When she got out, she did a flip in the air and landed back safely on the ground. Peter then shot a web towards the lizard's face and pulled towards him. "Hey, lizard face, I hope it's shedding season soon," Peter said as he pulled, "since you'll be needing a new set of skin after I'm done with you." Peter gathered a bit of electricity in his fist and punched the lizard right on the center of his torso when he arrived in front of Peter. It ended up leaving a scorch mark alongside a fist imprint right where it was hit. Chapter 54. Third person's POV. As Peter punched the lizard with a fistful of electricity, it was sent flying back, destroying the ground as it went along, leaving a long trail within the dirt. As the lizard stood up, it once again shook his head, as the fist imprint on the lizard's torso started to fill itself up, healing very quickly. But as Peter saw the imprint, he couldn't help but quip, "I always seem to leave a shocking impression on everyone I met." Peter then turned towards Gwen. "It seems its regenerative abilities are on a whole other level. I tore his jaw earlier and it's been healed up since it appeared." Gwen nodded her head. "Yeah, I saw. I knocked out a few teeth out earlier and they just regrew. It looks like we need to exhaust it until it can't regenerate anymore." Both Gwen and Peter then started running towards the lizard, and the lizard ran towards them as well. Instead of sending its claws towards them, it spun around rapidly and whipped its sharp tail in their direction. Both of their spidey senses went off, causing them to move out of the way. Gwen rolled under the tail while Peter jumped over it. They both then started fighting the lizard in harmony with each other. No words were exchanged. People could tell how well they knew and trusted each other by how in sync they were being. Peter would send a punch across the lizard's face, making his head turn towards Gwen's direction, which she also followed up with a bunch. The lizard would come close to hurting and scratching them, but they would pull the other out of the way with their webs, making it more difficult for the lizard. Peter went and kneaded the lizard right on the face, causing its head to snap back, which Gwen used as an opportunity. She slid underneath the lizard, and as she did, she shot a web towards the back of its snapback head and proceeded to swing and throw its entire body onto the ground, causing it to crack and cave in slightly due to the force. Peter and Gwen then started to web the lizard as it tried to get up. They shot a web towards him and ran around in opposite directions, wrapped it up, making it difficult for it to move. Gwen then went and kicked the lizard right under its jaw, sending it flying off the ground, but before it could start falling, Peter appeared from behind Gwen, stepped on her shoulder and uppercut it, lifting him up even further into the sky. Peter flipped in the air and shot a web behind Gwen and pulled him downwards. When he landed behind Gwen, he put his hands underneath her and launched her into the sky, where she proceeded to uppercut the lizard in the stomach, blasting him up even further. As soon as she blasted him, Gwen shot her webs downwards and onto Peter, pulled him up and flung him towards the lizard, where he proceeded to also uppercut him in the stomach. He then shot his webs towards Gwen. As he did, he proceeded to say, "We call this technique the itsy bitsy spider up the waterspout," and launched her towards the lizard. "We are not calling this that," Gwen said as she punched the lizard further into the sky. "How about the string out of hell? A/N, if you know you know, and if you don't that's too darn bad." "We're not calling it that either," Gwen said as she shot Peter past the lizard. Peter, who was above the lizard, then said, "Fine, since we're having trouble coming up with a name, how about a lesson on physics for a change of pace?" Peter then got on top of the lizard and pulled Gwen towards as she also landed on top of it. "What goes up must always comes down," Peter said with a smirk. And when Gwen landed on the lizard and pressed down on him, she also said, "And the heavier something is, the harder it falls." The lizard then started plunging into the ground due to both Peter and Gwen pressing down on him. The lizard started to panic and started thrashing around, trying to escape its webbing, but couldn't. Boom. The lizard landed on the ground, causing it dust, dirt, and pieces of the ground to fly everywhere. The lizard's body was embedded on the ground and knocked unconscious, much to the relief of Peter and Gwen. They both turned towards each other and high-five, which they started doing after a successful fight. Before they could discuss anything else, Arnie interrupted them. "I would advise to take Ms. Watson to the hospital. Although her wounds are covered, it's not a permanent solution. She has lost blood, which isn't something the base has in stock, so if she's in need of a blood transfusion, it won't happen there. So once again, I advise you to take her to the hospital, as her life could still be in danger." "Shit, she's right, let's go," Peter said as he started running towards MJ. "What about this lizard thing? What are we going to do about him?" "Honestly, at the moment I couldn't care less about it. MJ is much more important currently. I can always recapture it if it escaped, but I won't have a chance to make sure MJ is alright if she dies." Gwen looked at Peter slightly before nodding her head. When they arrived, MJ looked sickly pale, much to Peter and Gwen's dismay. Peter and Gwen shot a web towards their bag and put it on. Peter went and grabbed MJ before turning invisible alongside Gwen, who did the same. They both then exited through the broken window and swung away towards the nearest hospital. When they got onto a rooftop, and they went jumping and swinging from rooftop to rooftop and building to buildings. When they got close to hospital, they took off their bag and undid their invisible and jumped down towards the main entrance of the hospital. As soon as they arrived, they ran through the door and handed MJ to the nearest doctor. Peter put her on a wheeled stretcher and explained what happened. He explained that she lost a lot of blood and what they used to stop the bleeding, which were the webs, what they do and what type of medicine it was laced with. The doctor on site nodded his head when Peter explained and called a nurse to help. "Bring her to room 303, it's currently empty," he said towards a nurse that appeared as he took a small flashlight from his coat pocket. He then went and opened an eyelid, flashed the eye with it, repeated the same thing with the other eye. The doctor didn't pay any attention to Peter anymore as he helped wheel the stretcher. Peter then sighed and looked at Gwen. They both nodded and exited the hospital. When they reached outside, they jumped and swung away towards the building where they left their bags. Once they arrived, they made sure Arnie secured any visible cameras that could watch them. When they did, they took off their mask and started to change back to what they were previously wearing and waited a few seconds so they could go as civilians to visit MJ. Chapter 55. Third Person's POV. After a few minutes, both Peter and Gwen parkour themselves down the building and run at a moderate speed towards the hospital. When they arrived, they went to the front desk. "Hello, we're looking for a female patient that has arrived a few minutes earlier. She's a redhead." Peter then proceeded to describe Mary Jane's features to the receptionist. The receptionist nodded. "She has just arrived and is currently being treated. Her injuries aren't fatal, but they could have been if Spider-Man didn't bring her here on time. She is being treated as we speak. She is going to be needing some stitches and a couple of blood transfusions due to the amount of blood she lost, but other than that she will be okay. In fact, if you wait for a couple of minutes, she should have the go-ahead to be receiving visitors." Peter and Gwen nodded graciously towards the receptionist and went and took a seat next to each other. When they sat down, Peter leaned his head back onto the wall and closed his eyes while Gwen snaked her arms around his, took a hold of his hand and leaned her head on his shoulder. "Do you think it was a good idea to let it go?" Gwen said, keeping it ambiguous so people don't know what they're talking about. "No, that was a horrible judgment on my part," Peter said, pausing before continuing what he was saying. Whenever someone close to me gets hurt, I just seem to freak out. I'm sorry." Peter clenched Gwen's hand, feeling grateful to have her by his side. "To me, during that situation, my mind narrows down on two things, the problem or the solution, whichever seems most efficient, while completely discards the other. Like what happened with her father, he was a problem, so I dealt with him at time and discarded what I could have done differently, like ignoring him and making sure MJ was alright. I discarded that since I knew she wasn't seriously hurt, which wasn't the right thing to do. While in this case..." Peter then leaned towards Gwen's head and whispered what he was going to say. "While in this case, the problem was MJ's injury. My mind completely focused on that and discarded everything else involving the lizard axolotl hybrid. There's also the fact that this entire situation couldn't have happened if we took a different approach." "Are you seriously blaming yourself for what happened?" Gwen said, whispering right back, sounding shocked and annoyed. "This isn't your fault, it's that lizard thing's fault. He was the one who hurt her while she was trying to protect us. That's the thing, she wouldn't have tried to protect us if she knew what we were. If we were more honest with her, she wouldn't have thought we needed help," Peter whispered with a solemn expression. Gwen moved her head and kissed Peter on the cheek and went back to resting her head on his shoulder. "We have a good for keeping everything a secret. If we told everyone we knew what we were, it could put them in danger. And if we don't, it could do the same," Peter retorted back. Gwen said as she said, "Yes, but by a lesser amount. So please stop worrying about this. Plus you said we were going to tell my dad, Uncle Ben, Aunt May, and MJ, eventually. I think it's time we told them. We have been planning on it but have never found the perfect opportunity and have been delaying it due to our worry." Peter sighed and nodded his head. He kissed Gwen on the top of her head when his phone unexpectedly buzzed. When he took it out, he saw that it was Harry calling him. He showed it to Gwen and said, "I'll be right back." Gwen nodded as Peter stood up and turned towards an empty hallway. He stood by a wall as he answered the phone. "Hello," Peter said. "Where are you?" "Is everything okay?" Harry asked, sounding worried. "I'm at the hospital." Before Peter had a chance to explain, Harry started bombarding him with questions. "What happened? Are you okay? Is Gwen okay? Who's injured? How bad is the injury? Do you want me to be there? What about the lizard thing?" I don't know, maybe someone forgot to take a hold of someone and take care of them like I told them to," Peter said with a bit of an edge on his voice. "Oh God, MJ. I'm sorry, I know this is no excuse, but due to the chaos people kept bumping into us making us separate, I tried looking for her but I couldn't find her, Harry explained, sound guilty. Peter just sighs, no you don't need to explain, I shouldn't be taking it out on you. I'm just stressed with the whole situation, I'm sorry. No, it was my job to take care of them but I couldn't even do that, huh? So how did she get injured? Is she okay? Sigh. She tried to protect us from the lizard thingy not knowing we were just fine and almost died, but I managed to pull her away slightly. Her back ended up being slashed through, they said she needs a couple of stitches and blood transfusions and everything would be okay. Harry let out a sigh of relief hearing that. The last thing he wanted to hear was that one of his close friends had lost their life. Do you need me to go over there? Harry asked, to which Peter just replied with a no. There's really no need, just relax and we'll talk later about what you wanted to talk about earlier. To which Harry hummed in affirmation, but before he could say anything else Peter saw a doctor heading towards Gwen's direction. I have to go, a doctor is coming, Peter said as he hung up and went towards Gwen. She is allowed to have visitors but be aware due to the medication she will be quite drowsy. Gwen and Peter nodded their heads and thanked the doctor for their services, which he seems appreciative about, and told them her room number. They both almost ran towards her room, and as they entered, MJ was seen in a hospital gown with droopy eyes looking like she could fall asleep any minute. Hey sleepyhead, Peter said softly. When MJ looked over she let out a sigh of relief. I'm glad to see the two of you are safe and sound. That should be our line, Gwen said, we're very glad to see you alive and well. I could be better, MJ replied with a tired smirk. Gwen then turned towards Peter and said, actually can you give us a few minutes alone? I need to talk to her about something important. What? But I just got here, Peter said, looking at Gwen weirdly. Peter then looked at MJ, who just said, it's okay, I don't mind. Peter then looked at Peter and softly asked, please, sounding a bit vulnerable. Peter sighed, very well, just call me back in when you're done. I'll respect your privacy, and left the room. After Peter left, Gwen turned towards MJ and asked, why? Why would you do something so stupid? MJ awkwardly smiled, I can guess you already know why. Gwen nodded her head, that's true, but I want to hear it from you. It was MJ's turn to sigh as she said, very well, since you want to hear it. There is just one simple reason. MJ paused slightly before continuing. I'm completely in love with Peter Parker. Chapter 56. Gwen's POV. I watched as Peter looked at me for a bit, studying my expression, before sighing and leaving the room. As he left I turned towards MJ and prepared myself for the conversation that was long overdue. But first I waited for a few seconds just to give Peter time to walk away, since he would be able to hear us due to our enhanced senses. After a few seconds I could help myself but asked, why? Why would you do something so stupid? MJ's faces gained an awkward smile as she debated what to say. I can guess you already know why, she finally decided to say. And of course I know. It couldn't have been more obvious, the way she looks at him, the way she acts towards him compared to everyone else, how close they are, the small gestures that are difficult to pick up if one wasn't paying attention. It really couldn't have been more obvious. But I still wanted to hear her say it. It's the only way I'll be able to accept it. I want her to confirm my thoughts with her words alone. I want to hear from her very own words the thing she has kept hidden in her heart. I want to hear the reason why she was willing to give up her life for him. That's true, but I want to hear it from you, I said, expressing my inner turmoil into one sentence. MJ then lets out a heavy sigh, expressing how heavy her next words are. I think she wasn't ever going to express these feelings. This is most likely something she planned to take to her very own grave. She says, very well, since you want to hear it. There is just one simple reason. She pauses as her sleepy expression completely disappears, showing that what she would say next is something she said with 100% seriousness and not something she said while slightly drugged up. I'm completely in love with Peter Parker. And there it is, the $1 million answer. I let out a sigh as soon as I heard those words. I don't know of what though. A sigh of relief, a sigh of exhaustion, a sigh of exasperation, a sigh of acceptance, or a sigh of defeat. I simply don't know. I'm sorry, MJ whispered out, which caught me off guard. I tilted my head in confusion. What are you saying sorry for? If you're saying sorry for loving him, then don't. That is disrespecting your feelings and the love you have towards him. We can't help with who we fall in love with, and sometimes that love makes us do very, very, very stupid and idiotic things. Like what you did back there. That was not very smart, to say the least. Do you have any idea how much your death would have affected Peter if you went and died sacrificing your life for him? He wouldn't have been able to forgive himself. Believe or not, Peter cares a great deal about you. I then let out a sigh as I said, I know I'm probably going to regret this in the future, but fuck it. Like I said, love makes us do dumb things. Like allowing you to date Peter. MJ quickly snapped her head towards my direction, her face then contorted into pain. Oh, we. What? She then shouted. Her confusion is simply palpable at this point as she asked, why? There are many reasons actually why I'm allowing this. I know Peter and I know myself. Peter won't ever stop loving me. I can sometimes get insecure, but I just know it. I have faith in him and our relationship. I could see it in his eyes, the way he looks at me, the way he holds me. No matter how many girls he dates and falls in love with him, I will always be his number one. There are numerous reasons actually, I answered her and continued, but a few of the main ones would be that it would be selfish of me to simply tell you to stop loving him. It's rare to find someone that is willing to sacrifice their life to save the one they love. When you did that, you didn't only just use your body to save him, you also did it to save me. If I was seriously in danger, you could have left me for dead and used that chance to be able to have Peter all to yourself, but you didn't. You were seriously planning on using your life to save mine as well. I might not say this often, MJ, but I consider you my best friend, and I can't bring myself to hurt you by telling you to give up on Peter and move on. MJ just continued to look at me with her mouth wide open. That's it. She screamed once again. Seriously, oh, weak are her meds? She seemed so energetic. I shook my head answering her, of course not, but those are the main reasons why. Above all else, my number one priority has been and will always be Peter's happiness. If being with you makes him slightly happy, that's a risk I'm willing to take. But what about you? She asked and looked at me with a sad expression in her eyes. I simply shook my head at that. There's nothing to worry about. I'm okay with this, but I'm only okay with this since it's you. If it was anybody else, I would have probably caved their face in by now. But here's the catch. You have to get Peter to agree to go out with you and fall in love with you. I'll tell him that I'll allow this to happen so he won't just constantly reject you but actually thinks about you too. I still don't understand. Why are you allowing this? She asked, bewildered. I already answered this. I allow this simply because it's you. If it was anybody else, I would have probably caved their face in, I said pretty smugly, since I have the ability to actually do it. Mary Jane's eyelids then started appearing heavier and heavier, and she started speaking slower and slower as she said, You are a good girlfriend. Peter is extremely lucky to have you, she said as she closes her eyes and goes into rest. We have a lot of stuff we need to be discussing if we want this relationship to actually work, but before my thoughts delved any deeper, Peter sent me a message saying, You need to see this, we need to go quickly. When I opened the message, it was a video of a guy wearing an exoskeleton of a rhinoceros. Call the spiders, he said in a thick Russian accent. 'Cause Rhino is taking charge. He said while running and smashing his horn into a police car, sending it flying towards the bank he was standing in front of with a flick. What the fuck is wrong with this city? Chapter 57. Third person's POV. Gwen looked at MJ before quietly leaving the room. She found Peter a few feet down the hall waiting for her on his phone. It looked like he was texting someone. We can't just leave her here all by herself. What if she wakes up and finds herself all alone? Gwen said when she arrived in front of Peter. She fell asleep. Peter asked, to which Gwen nodded. Peter then showed Gwen his phone and said, She won't be alone. I texted Harry and told him to bring Felicia. So she wouldn't be by herself. Gwen nodded her head and sighed. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's go. Peter nodded his head and both of them quickly walked out of the hospital. When they got out, they started to run towards the building where they left their bags and started parkour their way up towards it while they turned invisible when they made sure no one was looking. Once on the rooftop, they took off their clothes, leaving them in their superhero outfits, and with a quick jump they swung away towards their opponent's direction. I think I just found the Russian mercenary Harry was talking about, Peter said mid-swinging. Oh. What gave it away? Was it him calling us out or his exoskeleton in the shape of a rhino? Gwen retorted back with a smirk. It was actually his Russian accent, Peter said with a laugh. They soon arrived and found the rhino, who was wearing a large armor with the shape of a rhinoceros, like what he was wearing during the Amazing Spider-Man 2, going on a rampage tossing around cop cars. I said, "Bring me ze spiders. Your puny bullets, they do nothing." Peter leaped towards Rhino and shouted, "Oh yeah, how about my fist," and punched the Rhino, sending him flying back, tumbling across the road. The Rhino slammed his fist on the ground, slowing him down into a stop. He shook his head and looked to see where the punch came from. When the Rhino saw them, he just smirked. Perfect. Rhino started sliding his feet on the ground like a bull charging up an attack. He then took off into a run, running straight towards Peter. Every step Rhino took, the ground would leave his metallic footprint due to his weight. "Come and surrender yourself to me so I can be rich," he shouted while running with his head slightly down, pointing his horn at Peter. "I feel like I should have a red flag ready, but oh well," Peter said as he spread his legs and arms, slightly anticipating Rhino's attack. When the Rhino tried to impale Peter with his horn, Peter slightly moved to the side and wrapped his arms around his large metallic head and slammed his foot down, breaking the ground. Due to the Rhino's strength and momentum, Peter was pushed back as he tried to slow the Rhino down. The ground cracked, leaving a long earthly trail as Peter used his strength to put a stop to Rhino's charge. Peter then used its momentum against him and lifted the Rhino off the ground, taking him by surprise. "Oh!" Peter shouted as he slammed the metallic Rhino back onto the ground. The street cracked and dust and rubble flew everywhere due to the weight. The area also rumbled slightly, causing a miniature tremor. Meanwhile, Gwen was going around moving police cars out the way and helping everyone that was injured due to the Rhino's previous tantrum. The Rhino slowly moved and quickly brought himself back up with a few grunting noises. Peter could see much due to the dust, so he used Arnie to get a better view. Peter saw that the Rhino was now back up, shaking his head to take away the dizziness of being slammed on the ground. "I will break you, insect," the Rhino shouted after getting back up. Peter didn't wait for the Rhino to charge and attack first. He wrapped his fist in electronics and punched the Rhino right on its iron torso, sending his flying back, leaving a fist imprint. Gwen appeared from helping the people around them and sent a blast of cold air, freezing its hands and feet on the ground. "Freeze. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney." Rhino easily broke the ice and shook off any ice that was on his armor, much to Gwen's disappointment. And I thought he would have frozen in place." "You are too weak and small to do anything, you bugs," Rhino taunted while secretly having trouble controlling the suit of armor. "You haven't even touched us, bro," Peter shouted, cupping his fist by his mouth, trying to amplify his voice. Hearing this, Rhino grew enraged. "They wanted you two alive, but I'm sure they can make do with your bodies," he shouted as he started running towards them. Gwen and Peter also started running. They both shot their webs and pulled himself towards his direction and slammed both of their fist Rhino, sending him flying back and laying on his back. They started shooting their webs at him, making it difficult to do anything. Rhino would rip them off, but not entirely, making it almost impossible to move. Rhino slammed both his fist into the ground, breaking the concrete and turning it into rubble. He picked them up and tossed them towards Peter and Gwen, who had no choice but to stop and punch the rubble flying in their direction so it wouldn't hurt other people. Peter wrapped himself in lightning and ran towards Rhino. He started running around in circles, confusing him and gathering more and more lighting. Peter aimed his hands at Rhino and shot a bolt of electricity, shocking the suit of armor and causing the system to overload. Gwen came and put her hands on the armor as soon as it stopped and started freezing it to stop it from exploding in case it overheated it, enveloping it in a thick ice sheet, making it difficult to move. The suit then stood perfectly still. All the heard was someone shouting in pure Russian. Peter then made a face and looked at its direction, which made Gwen quickly look at him weirdly. "You understand what he's saying?" "Yeah, and I rather not translate. My God, he kisses his mother with that mouth." "How the hell do you know Russian?" Peter shrugged his shoulders. "I knew I was going to help people someday, so I learned every possible language I could so I could communicate with everyone I came across that needed help without the need to worry about the language barrier." "Since when?" Gwen asked, shocked at this piece of information. "Whenever I had free time. I never really had a chance to use the skills, and it really wasn't something to brag about," Peter said, shrugging his shoulders. Gwen still looked at Peter in shock, and her respect and admiration of him increased ever so slightly. Peter then held out his hand in a high-five manner and said, "Here's to another villain apprehended." Gwen smirked and gave Peter a high-five. As soon as their hands made connect, a wormhole suddenly appeared behind them, taking them by surprise. "What?" they both shouted as they got sucked in. AHHHHHHHHH, both Peter and Gwen shouted as they traveled through the bending pathways of the wormhole. A portal suddenly appeared. They exited the portal with a thumb failing straight into a rooftop. They both quickly stood up and pressed their backs against each other and looked at their surroundings for any danger. "I'll have you know I'm a black belt in karate," Peter said in a karate chopping position. When they noticed nothing around them, they got confused and reached the edge of a rooftop where they saw a broadcast on a big screen in the middle of a building. Breaking news. New York's hero Spider-Man found dead at 26-inch. Peter and Gwen's eyes widened at what they were seeing on the screen. What the fuck? Chapter 58. Third person's POV. Peter and Gwen looked at the screen in front of them. Peter already knows what's going on, but it still doesn't take away the shock that he was experiencing. Gwen is in a whole other state of shock at what she was seeing. It almost made Gwen believe she was dreaming if she didn't fall face first onto the snowy ground. "Hey Gwen," Peter said while still looking at the news. "Yes, Peter?" Gwen asked with shock still evident in her voice. "I think I'm dead." I can see that. What the hell is going on?" Gwen couldn't help but scream out once again. She pointed on the screen as she continued screaming. "Why is there a freaking blonde version of you saying you're dead?" Peter, who continued looking at the screen, just said, "Okay, call me crazy, but I believe we were just sucked through a portal to another reality." Peter then quickly tapped at the side of his head as he asked, "Wait, Arnie, are you still there?" Peter called out, "Yes, I am here, Father. But my abilities have been cut to an all-time low. I don't have access to my servers." Arnie appeared out of the corner of his eyes, lagging and glitching like she would disconnect at any minute. "Just lay low for a bit. I'll try to see if I can fix you when I have a chance." Arnie didn't say anything and just shut down to conserve her energy. "Husband of Mary Jane Watson," Gwen whispered. Peter turned his head and looked at Gwen in confusion. "What? In this reality or whatever you marry MJ? Really?" Peter just looked at Gwen in surprise. "That's what got your attention, woman? Not that we're currently stranded in a unknown universe or that the other me is dead, but my other me's marital status. I can't help it. All right. I'm freaking out, and I thought that we were meant to be together in every single universe out there, and I just discovered that we're not. That was one of the reasons I allow MJ to pursue you and you be allowed to date the two of us." There was a long pause between the two of them. "Wait, hey, Peter shouted at the top of his lungs. He took off his mask as there really wasn't any need to have them on at the moment, and Gwen followed his example. Peter took a deep breath and released it and repeated the action with his hands as he said, "Let's take a deep breath first and calm down. Shouting isn't going to get us anywhere." Gwen nodded her head and took a deep breath, trying to calm herself down. Peter pinched the bridge of his nose as he said, "Now would you mind explaining what you meant when you said you allowed MJ to pursue me and when we agreed to this decision of me having a harem?" "It's not a harem," Gwen snapped back with gritted teeth. Gwen then sighed and explained what she said and did back before they were pulled into another reality. Peter sat at the edge of the snowy ledge and let out a tired sigh. "Has it ever occurred to you that maybe perchance I won't like the idea of having a harem? I didn't even freaking know MJ liked me." Gwen snapped her head to his direction. She couldn't help but curse as she asked, "Are you fucking serious? Please tell me you're joking." Peter awkwardly scratched his cheek and blushed, which made him turn his head slightly to avoid being seen by Gwen, but due to her enhanced senses they were hard to miss. "Oh well, you see, I don't really pay attention to any other girl that isn't you. I stopped paying attention to the signs of girls liking me since none of that mattered to me when we started going out. You were the one that was mostly on my mind all the time, so I didn't really pay any attention to the clues MJ left behind if what you said is true." Peter said with his face turning a light shade of red, "Which is true. The thing with Black Cat was just my past excitement from my previous life. I didn't actually think of her as attractive now that I think about it. I like the thought of Black Cat, not Black Cat herself." Peter thought to himself. "Oh," Gwen mutters, blushing as well. They slowly brought their hands together and intertwined their fingers together, enjoying their moment alone together. Gwen squeezed Peter's hand as she sighed. "Look, I'm not trying to say or force you to date MJ, all I'm saying is to give her a chance." "You're still on that?" Peter asked, turning to Gwen and looking at her with a raised brow. Gwen nodded her head. "I already gave her permission. It would be wrong and cruel of me to suddenly say, you know what, I changed my mind. Give up on your feelings, plus MJ is literally the only girl I can see you with where the feeling of betrayal and disgust consumes me. She was even willing to throw away her life to save both of our lives if it meant you could be happy. She valued your happiness over her own life. I just can't say no or dislike her for that. You're really selling this, aren't you? Peter Benjamin Parker, the Spider Harem King, conqueror of worlds and women alike. Gwen went and sat on Peter's lap and went face to face with him. She held his face, looked at him in his eyes, and smiled so sweetly that it captivated Peter for a bit. Call it a harem one more time and I swear I'll castrate you. Do I make myself clear? Yes, dear, Peter meekly responded. Gwen brought Peter's face close to hers and kissed him on the lips. She bit his lip and pulled on it slightly. Good. Since when did you become such a seductress? Peter asked with a smile, taking a hold of Gwen's lower cheeks and pulling her closer. Since I found out we are not always together in every universe. I have to keep you on a tight leash somehow. Peter brought her closer, pressing their bodies together, being the one to initiate the kiss between them. Well, you're doing a good job, you're making it hard to let go of you. Good, Gwen said in between their kisses, that means what I'm doing is working. Peter and Gwen then pressed their heads together. Now on to serious matter, what are we gonna do about our current predicament? Honestly, if we are in an alternate universe, that means that Peter Parker most likely has an Uncle Ben and Aunt May. I'm worried about them. Peter said, knowing there isn't an Uncle Ben but just said it to keep appearances. So what do we look for them first? Gwen asked, to which Peter nodded. And it's best if we become invisible. We wouldn't want to surprise people and make them believe Spider-Man is still alive. Gwen nodded her head and kissed Peter one more time, Peter getting off him and grabbing her mask, putting it back on. Which prompted Peter to do the same. They both turned invisible and jumped off the building and started heading towards Aunt May's direction. Chapter 59. Third Person's POV. Do you even know where Aunt May and Uncle Ben live in this world? Gwen asked while in between swings. No, but I can always look out for two things. Where most people are located and offering their thoughts and prayers, and the address where we live in our reality. Peter responded. Let's try with the latter first. It seems like the most logical choice at the moment, Gwen suggests, to which Peter agreed with, and as they were swinging they saw someone swinging a few feet in front of them. Although it was difficult to see him due to him wearing all black, they were still able to make out its silhouette. Although both Gwen and Peter were invisible, they were still able to know where they were and looked at each in surprise. They undid their invisibility and fastened their pace towards the black silhouette. Hey, wait! Peter shouted, causing the guy to turn his head and look towards their direction. He slowed down and allowed Peter and Gwen to catch up, and when they did, all of their spidey senses started blaring, showing they were one and the same. Whoa, this is trippy, Peter said, shaking his head as they all soon landed towards the nearest rooftops. So who are you guys? Spider-Noir asked, tilting his head. Named Spider-Man, Peter said as he took off his mask and extended his hand, but I'm also Peter Parker. Gwen looked at Peter, slightly surprised at him revealing his identity to someone they just met. But she followed her boyfriend's example and took off her mask as well. I go by Ghost Spider, but you can just call me Gwen. Spider-Man, Spider-Man Noir. But you can just call me Noir, I also go by Peter Parker. He said, but didn't go and reach for his mask. Peter and Gwen just decided to leave it off as they felt they would need to take it on and off constantly. Wait, were you also sucked in through a portal and randomly appear here? Gwen asked. To which Noir nodded his head, and based on your reactions and words I take it you arrived the same way. I see, so we weren't the only one. Do you think there are more of us from different universes? Gwen asked. Absolutely, in fact I'm 100% sure, Peter said, nodding his head. Gwen looked at him in confusion and asked, how can you be so sure? Well, I don't know, maybe because there's a spider pig swinging behind Noir. Noir turns around and Gwen leans to look behind him to see a cartoonish pig in a spider costume swinging on his webs. Okay, I have seen everything this life has to offer, Gwen said, looking at it with a deadpan expression. Oi! Piggers! Peter yelled out while cupping his hands by his mouth. Spider-Ham, who was swinging towards Aunt May's location, turns his head when he hears someone calling out to him. He switches direction and arrives in front of everyone. Their spidey senses goes off again, and after shaking their heads to get rid of their disorientation, Spider-Ham introduces himself. Pleasure to meet you, everybody, Peter Parker at your service, also known as Spider-Ham. Gwen snorted when she heard that. Peter just looked at her with a deadpan expression as he just says, Gwendolyn. Which caused her to pout and kick him on the ankles. Peter started hopping on one foot while holding the other. Ouchie, ow, ow, ow. Call me that again and next time it'll be harder. Gwen then turns to the rest of the spider's direction and starts to introduce everyone. She then asks, so where are you all going? It looks like we are heading towards the same direction. They all nodded their heads as they said, yeah, I'm going to Aunt May's place, both Noir and Porker say at the same time while Gwen mentions Uncle Ben, causing the two of them to look at Peter and Gwen in surprise. Your Uncle Ben is alive. Hearing each other say the same thing, both Noir and Porker look at each other and ask, yours is also dead too? Are the two of you from the same universe? Noir asked, to which Peter nodded. And yes, our Uncle Ben is alive, why wouldn't he be? Peter asked, even though he knew why, but they didn't say anything and just kept quiet. Well, anyway, since we're going to the same place, why don't we go together? Gwen asked, to which they all nodded their heads. And with a jump they all shoot their webs and start swinging away in the same direction, which just confirmed the way to both Gwen and Peter. When they arrive they notice pictures and plushies of Spider-Man and this universe's Peter Parker with candles spread around the house. They jumped down from the sky and landed on Aunt May's front door, where they all proceeded to knock at the same time. After a few seconds Aunt May answers the door with a tissue on hand and red eyes. Aunt May, they all softly called out to her, seeing her in such a state. Peter. Aunt May asked in a surprised tone when she heard the endearing way they all called to her. It sounds the same way her Peter used to call her. Peter, MC, Noir, and Spider-Ham all nodded their heads, confirming her thoughts on the matter. May we come in? Noir asked, taking off his hat and putting it near his chest. Aunt May nodded her head and made way while still looking at everyone in shock. But before anyone could go in, they all felt their spidey senses go off again, detecting someone behind them. Hope I'm not too late and you guys don't mind me joining in. My spidey senses told me to come here. They turn around surprised to see another Gwen behind them with a little girl of Asian descent next to her with a giant mecha spider behind them. Both Gwens then looked and pointed at each other in surprise. Holy moly, there are two of us. Chapter 60. Third person's POV. The two Gwen looked at each other in shock. They slowly held out their palm and made their hands slowly touch. They waited in anticipation as if the universe would collapse on itself if they made contact. Boom. Peter shouted, causing both of them to jump in fright. Peter started laughing seeing them jump, while his Gwen slapped him on the shoulder. Don't do that. You almost gave a heart attack. Ha ha ha, sorry, I couldn't help it, Peter said in between his laughs. Just what is going on? Aunt May asked, seeing so many people gathered dressed in different Spider-Man outfits. Peter and the rest of them looked at Aunt May awkwardly and slowly entered her living room. Well, first thing first, I'm sorry for your loss, Aunt May, Peter said sincerely, which the others soon followed. But Peter didn't get to finish what he was saying as they started glitching. They all then groaned in pain, which caused Aunt May to look at them with worry. Okay, as I was saying, we're not from this universe. I believe that whatever killed this Peter Parker is related to what brought us all here. It makes sense, one way or another we are all related to Spider-Man, Noir said while looking around. It could be what caused that earthquake earlier, Aunt May said while looking at everyone. Tears slowly streamed down her face thinking about what could have caused Peter's death. All the Spider-Men/women started comforting her. I could look into it, but I would need my AI for it. Peter said while contemplating letting out a hint. You have an AI? Penny Parker asked. To which Peter nodded with a proud smirk. He then showed his mask as he then explained, built her myself, she's currently resting and needs a powerful server to operate. Cool mecha, by the way, do you mind if I study it when we have the chance? Peter asked, looking out the window and at the giant metal spider. I don't mind. Penny said, shrugging her shoulders. I got just the thing you need, follow me, Aunt May said, grabbing her keys. Everyone soon started following Aunt May outside as she went out back and towards the shed. Even the mecha started following behind them. As Aunt May inserted the key into the lock, a bright red spider symbol appeared, which was followed by the door gaining a spider symbol as well, opening up leading into a high-tech elevator. I'm definitely stealing some of these ideas, 'cause that was sick, Peter said as he along with everyone else entered. Gwen just scoffed and playfully smacked his arm, be respectful. You two seem awfully close, Gwen too said, noticing how they interacted with each other and how handsy they are with each other. Gwen just looked at Gwen too confused, well yeah, I sure hope we're close, he's my boyfriend after all. Aunt May pressed the elevator button once everyone was inside, while Gwen too looked at the two in shock before blushing slightly then looking downcast. As they started going down, different gadgets and machinery were on display, and when they reached the bottom floor, they were in the middle of the room with different Spider-Man outfits displayed neatly side by side. "Okay, I'm definitely stealing some of these ideas," Peter said looking around. Aunt May looked at Peter with a smile as she says, "Well then I hope you put them to good use." Peter just smiled right back. Aunt May pointed at the large monitor and computer system as she said, "You can use that." Peter nodded and went ahead of everyone, took the mask and turned it inside out. He looked around the large computer and started looking around it until he found a cable. "Here it is," Peter said as he connected the cable to the mask. A loading screen with a loading bar appears on the screen. "That's weird," Peter said, thinking of what the problem could be. But after thinking for a few seconds he just shrugged his shoulder and waited. So while they waited, everyone started to get to know each. "So what happened with your Peter?" Gwen asked Gwen too after thinking about her reaction to the news of them dating. "He's dead. He turned into this lizard monster and I wasn't able to save him," Gwen too said with a downcast expression on her face. Gwen went and hugged Gwen too and started reassuring her that everything was going to be all right. "As for me, I'm alone. Just the way I like it. My only solace is the night and my enemies," Noir said. Penny opened up the mecha and out came the little spider. It was resting on her shoulder. "I have a telepathic link with this little guy." "No way. You kept yours alive too," Peter, although he was faking a bit of his excitement, he was happy to meet someone that also kept their spider alive. "Have you named yours?" Peter asked. Penny just shook her head. "I haven't really had a need to name her, Penny," which she then paused and looked at Peter in confusion. "Wait, did you really name your spider?" "Of course, Mr. Daddy Long Legs is one of a kind after all." Everyone stopped talking with each other and turned to look at Peter, giving him a "really" look. Peter's face then grew slightly red as he got embarrassed. "It's not that bad, all right, Father." Everyone quickly turned to look towards where they heard the voice of an energetic little girl. Peter's eyes widened in shock at what he was seeing. "Arnie? Is that you?" In the large monitor behind them, a little girl with the lower body of a spider appeared. She had light purple short hair, 2 large eyes with 6 little eyes above them, and a happy grin plastered on her face. "Pick." The girl in the monitor pouted. "What? Father doesn't recognize me now that I had a bit of a makeover." "A makeover? You had a whole surgical procedure," Gwen said, looking at Arnie in surprise. "And I take it that is not normal?" Porker asked, looking at Gwen's and Peter's reaction. No, it's not. She was, let's just say, a bit more robotic than she is now," Gwen said, still looking at Arnie in shock. "And it's all Father's fault, Mother. He was too lazy to make a power source even though he's smart enough to do it and build me a quantum computer for my processing speed and development. Oi. Don't throw me under the bus now. I was just waiting for the right opportunity," Peter said with a weary smile. While Gwen just gained another surprise. "Did you just call me Mother?" Arnie nodded her little head. "Of course, you will one day be Father's wife and was there through it all when he was making me, so it's natural that you would be my mother." Peter looked at Gwen's shocked expression and nudged her slightly. "Congratulations on the promotion." "So how did all this happen?" Penny asked, looking at Peter's now super advanced AI. "It's thanks to the computer system I'm currently in. Whoever made it really knows their stuff. I was able to study emotions and human interactions better thanks to the processing power and storage it has. So I was able to develop my own taste and looks. So what do you think, Father?" Peter just looked at Arnie proudly. "You look amazing." Chapter 61. Third Person's POV. Now on to important matters. Arnie can hack into any surveillance cameras/systems and look for this world Spider-Man's last moment, Peter said as his expression turned serious. Arnie nodded her head. "It'll only take a few seconds, and Father?" "Yeah?" Peter asked, confused. "Give me a better nickname. I don't like Arnie." "It's weird," Arnie said, pouting and crossing her arms. Peter sighed at that, before mumbling, "Finny." Arnie nodded her head and a video soon appeared on the big screen. "Norman, listen to me. I can't let you open a portal to another dimension," this world Spider-Man said while being up against a green metal container. Everyone stopped what they were doing and paid attention to the screen, listening to everything. On the screen a giant green goblin appeared snarling at Spider-Man. "Brooklyn isn't zoned for that," he continued. "It's not up to me," he growled, making his way towards Spider-Man. "Why won't you quit?" He continued. "I guess I like Brooklyn not being sucked into a black hole," Spider-Man said while dodging Green Goblin as it went and tried to punch him but only ended up hitting the container. Spider-Man started webbing his way around the environment, swinging from a crane and kicking Green Goblin in the face. Staten Island maybe, but not Brooklyn. As Peter swung away, a damaged part of the crane slid down to the side, causing everyone to hear a panicked little scream in the far distance. The crane moved to the side. Spider-Man and the Green Goblin fought, showing Miles hanging on from the swinging crane. "Miles?" Gwen 2 said in a questioning tone. "You know him?" Penny asked while they continued watching the events unfold. Gwen 2 nodded her head. "Yeah, he goes to the school I'm recently attending." They continued watching the Green Goblin start throwing bombs while Miles was now on the floor dodging, trying to find cover. But Spider-Man and Green Goblin just continued fighting. "Is he from another universe or is he from this one?" Noir asked. "He's from this one," Arnie answered, pausing the video, pulling up Miles' record. Noir just narrowed his eyes at frozen image of Miles trying to find cover while Peter and Green Goblin were frozen in place fighting. "It looks like he just recently got bitten. He doesn't seem to have any experience." "That I can confirm as well. He only bitten today actually. He suddenly grew and tried to blame it on puberty, and he got his fingers stuck in my hair. That's why it's cut in the first place," Gwen 2 said with a bit of annoyance towards what happened to her hair. Everyone nodded their heads and looked towards the screen where the video continued to play. Miles tried to hide under a container that was slightly off the ground, but the goblin just picked it up and threw it at Peter. Miles quickly got up and ran to the side through a large doorway, which only led to the collider that brought them from their universe. Miles stopped right on the edge of the platform. If he went any further he would have ended up rolling down towards it. Spider-Man and the goblin continued fighting, slowly coming down the same route Miles went through. The goblin was sent flying, accidentally knocking Miles down, causing him to scream as he tried to stick onto the floor, but a large hole was there that Miles almost went down in. Luckily he managed to stick himself just on the last piece of metal, but the goblin wasn't so lucky. He was sent flying right down the hole. Peter swung by, not noticing Miles. While Miles tried to push him up, he accidentally slipped off, causing him to fall down the fall. "Ah!" You could hear Miles screaming. Spider-Man turned towards Miles and changed his direction and shot himself towards Miles, catching him by the back of his sweater and carrying him to safety. You couldn't hear what they were discussing since they were whispering, but at some point they stopped talking and just looked at each other. Every spider person in the know knew that they were discovering that they were the same and got bitten by a spider. The collider then started turning on, charging itself up. Spider-Man then jumped and parkoured his way through the collider, using it to move around. He used the moving collider to gain momentum and swing his way towards the ceiling. He started moving around a bit, tapping the ceiling looking for something. He seemed to have found it and hit it, causing it to open slightly. He used his strength to pry it open. He took out a computer chip and tried putting it on a spot where he could. But before he could, he detected something and stopped. The Prowler shot him himself from the ceiling and tackled Spider-Man away from the machine. They started fighting each other in the air for a while before the Prowler kicked him with his powered-up boots, sending him flying to a part of the collider. As he laid down, he sighed before going up and fighting the Prowler in hand-to-hand combat for a bit. The Prowler punched him, pushing him back towards the spinning part of the collider. Spider-Man stopped it with one hand before he tried to web his way back to fighting the Prowler. But before he made it far, the Green Goblin swooped down and dropped on top of him, stopping him from advancing. As he was being held down, the Prowler jumped down from the collider and got away. As the collider started gaining more power, the light started to brighten, showing it close to activation. "No. No, don't do this. Stop!" Spider-Man yelled. "You don't know what it could do. You'll kill us all." A part of the machine came down right on the middle of the collider. The collider then turned on, shooting a red beam from each side and started colliding into each other. Arnie then started showing different effects of the multiple dimensions opening around Brooklyn from different camera angles. Back to Spider-Man, the Green Goblin got hit by part of the machine, causing him to be unconscious and release Spider-Man. He slid off him and off the machine. Peter tried to swing away, but just as quickly as Green Goblin lost consciousness, he quickly regained it. He shot towards Peter and grabbed him using his foot. He flew Peter and smashed his head inside the red beam, causing Aunt May to flinch and look away. She couldn't see it. she couldn't see her nephew, the same one she treated as a son, die like that. Spider-Ham went and held Aunt May's hand as he continued watching everything without saying a word, which was unusual from someone of his nature. After a few seconds of Goblin smashing Peter's head inside the collider, a giant explosion occurred, making the camera start glitching and cut off for a bit. Chapter 62. Third person's POV. Seeing the explosions that occurred, everyone there thought that was the end of it, and that's how Spider-Man died. But before they could turn towards each to talk, Arnie interrupted them. Wait, that isn't the end of it. Everyone, including Aunt May, were taken by surprise when they heard her. They waited for a few seconds before the screen in front of them started glitching and flickering on and off. Everything was a mess, rubble was everywhere, sparks were flying about. The Green Goblin was smashed against the wall with its head going right through a wall behind him. When Peter saw that, he narrowed his eyes. That isn't what happened. He was supposed to be crushed to death by the rubble and machines, but he just looks knocked out. It looks like our arrival has already started changing some things. On the monitor, the video switched to Spider-Man's position. The place seems to be going in circles slightly. As Spider-Man sat on the ground a few feet away looking very injured, Aunt May covered her mouth to stop herself from gasping loudly. What's happening to the video? Gwen too asked, seeing it just spinning slightly and Miles slowly approaching. It looks like something happened to the wiring and is just dangling there, Arnie said while switching towards another perspective, her little avatar coming into the screen pointing to the little dangling piece of camera. She then switches back the perspective towards Spider-Man and resumes the video of Miles going towards Peter trying to help. Hey! Are you okay? Miles says to Spider-Man, but they could barely hear it, sounding somewhat close to a whisper. Arnie, can you reconfigure the sound and amplify it? Peter said while standing next to Gwen, his expression turning serious and crossing his arms, especially after seeing this world's goblin not dead under some rubble. On it, Daddy. Arnie cheerily said, breaking Peter's serious expression. His cheeks started turning slightly red, which Gwen caught. Gwen turned her head to the side and covered her mouth slightly before snickering to herself. She patted Peter's arm. Hear that? You're a daddy now, she said between her snickers. The scene quickly replayed, causing the serious situation to return. I'm fine, just resting. Spider-Man said, answering Miles's question. Can you get up? Miles asked anxiously. Yeah, Spider-Man said, sounding exasperated. Yeah, I always get up, he said while resting his back. Which caused him to start coughing. The coughing is probably not a good sign, Spider-Man said, stating the obvious, trying to lighten the mood. Find him, now. Kingpin aka Wilson Fisk demanded. Spider-Man took a hold of Miles's sweater and pulled him closer. Listen, we got to team up here. We don't have that much time. He took Miles's hand and handed him a computer chip. This override key is the only way to stop the collider. Swing up there, use this key, push the button, and blow it up. You need to hide your face. You don't tell anyone who you are. No one can know. He's got everyone in his pockets. If he turns on the machine again, everything you know will disappear. Your family, everyone. Everyone. Promise me you'll do this. Spider-Man and Miles continued to look at each other for a while before Miles nodded his head. I promise. Go. He grunts, destroy the collider. I'll come and find you, he yelled, which caused him to start coughing again. Miles got up and started running back. Miles looks back towards Spider-Man, but Spider-Man just reassured him, it's going to be okay. Miles started climbing some part of the rubble and looked up towards the collider that was still okay after the explosion. Tombstone, Miles heard Kingpin say, causing him to hide by the rubble close by. We're done with these tests. Get that thing ready to go again, and soon. He demanded, which caused the scientist next to him to run towards his tasks. Run faster, Kingpin said while sneering. These guys are weak. I'd say it's nice to see you again, Spider-Man, but it's not. Kingpin said, walking towards him and standing before him imposingly with Tombstone and Prowler standing behind him to his left and right respectively. Hey Kingpin, how's business? Spider-Man said completely out of breath. Booming, Kingpin quid before reaching over and grabbing Spider-Man's mask. Nice, that's a no-no, Spider-Man said as he had his identity exposed. Kingpin started chuckling, this might open a black hole under Brooklyn. Spider-Man shook his head as he then said, it can't be worth the risk. Kingpin leaned in closely, it's not always about the money, Spider-Man. The Prowler then stepped forward and took out his claws, causing Spider-Man to roll his eyes and groan. Spider-Man looks at Prowler before looking at Kingpin. "Don't you want to know what I saw in there?" "Wait," Kingpin said, stretching out his hand and stopping Prowler from advancing. "I know what you're trying to do and it won't work. They're gone." Kingpin didn't say anything and just continued looking at Spider-Man. He closed his eyes before screaming out in anger and slamming down both his fist, killing Spider-Man. Aunt May bursted out crying when she saw this, causing almost everyone in the room to clench their hands in anger. Noir, who stood next to Aunt May, pulled him for a hug and let her pour her heart out in his chest. "He's gone," Aunt May sobbed, while clenching Noir's trench coat. "My nephew, my Peter. My son is gone," Aunt May cried out. Tears started pouring down everyone's eyes when they heard Aunt May's distraught voice and cries. To almost all the Spider-Men, Aunt May was more than an aunt, she was their mother. And it looks like it was the same way for her. Peter was more than just a nephew that was entrusted to her. He was her son, her little boy that she raised, but now she won't be able to ever see him again. Her son was murdered in cold blood. Chapter 63. Third person's POV. Nobody said anything as Aunt May continued crying. She slowly headed towards the elevator and left to find a place to mourn by herself. Everyone wiped then terror and stood in a looming silence. "Please tell me I'm not the only one having murderous thoughts towards Kingpin," Peter said, breaking the silence. "I'm feeling the same way," Spider-Man Noir said solemnly. Gwen too looked at them in surprise. "You guys are serious?" She looked around and saw that nobody said anything. Peter once broke the silence. "Obviously no, we're not savages that deal with things purely with our instincts, but I can't deny that the feeling is there. I don't know how it is in your universe or what your relationship with Aunt May is, but she has taken care of me since I was a little boy, always worrying about me and making sure I'm alright, and I will say this with all honesty. I would kill for that woman, no matter from what universe she's from." The other spider people nodded their heads as well in agreement, taking Gwen too by surprise. She looked at her counterpart and was surprised to see her nodding her head along with the others. "Even you?" To which Gwen nodded her head. "In our world my mother died while giving birth to me, so it was mostly my dad and I for most of our lives." "That is until I met Peter," Gwen said with a smile towards the end, slipping her hands into his. "As we started to grow closer I would spend most of my time at his place while Dad was either at work, or I was just bored. Aunt May treats me like I'm one of her own. She's like a mother I never had." "You guys are making me jealous for not having an Aunt May of my own," Gwen too said with a weary smile, looking at how defensive they were towards Aunt May. Before they could say anything else, the video on the screen continued playing. "Dispose of the body," Kingpin ordered. All the spider people snapped their attention back towards the screen and saw Miles accidentally moving something, causing it to make a sound. Kingpin, Prowler, and Tombstone all looked towards his direction. Miles, seeing that, took off running without looking back. "Kill that guy," Kingpin said coldly, causing the Prowler to start running towards Miles, chasing him. Miles started running back the way he came from, with the Prowler following close behind. The camera switched to a subway tunnel system where Miles was running from the Prowler. In front of Miles a train was fast approaching, causing him to jump and stick to the ceiling, while the Prowler moved his body back off the tracks and leaned against the wall as the train passed underneath Miles and a few inches away from the Prowler face. When the train passed, Miles tried to release his hold on the ceiling but was unsuccessful. "Stop sticking," he said as he tried to pull himself off but was still unsuccessful. The Prowler was slowly making his way towards him, extracting his claws. When Miles saw and heard that his attempt at trying unstick himself became forceful. Cracks started growing on the ceiling while Miles kept yelling, "Stop sticking." He closed his eyes and tried concentrating and pulled his hands off with a big tug, causing a bit of the ceiling to come off. Miles landed on the ground with a roll and immediately transitioned into running, which the Prowler quickly followed. Miles continued running through the tunnel until he saw a train coming through the entrance of the tunnel. Miles picked up his speed and jumped towards the subway platform, and the training to continue going through the tunnel made it block the Prowler for a bit, which gave Miles the perfect opportunity to get away from the Prowler. Seeing this, Gwen too let out a sigh of relief. It looks like he managed to get away in time. So what about now? What's his current location and condition? Arnie then pulled up a video clip of Miles climbing through the window, entering a room before switching off. "Based on the information here, that is his home. So you guys have nothing to worry about. He's made it home safe," Arnie informed them. Well then, what are we waiting for? Let's get that kid, Spiderman said, turning around and walking towards the elevator. Let's not. Peter said, taking all of them by surprise. What, why? Asked Gwen, too surprised. Peter sighed. The kid just experienced something traumatic. He saw someone die right in front. Even though I call him a kid, he's just a year younger than me, but you understand what I'm saying. Noir nodded his head at Peter's reasoning. He's right. It's best we let the kid digest what just occurred before bringing him further into this mess. So what do we do in the meantime then? Penny asked, tilting her head. Before they could say anything, Arnie interrupted. She started raising her hand as if wanted to be called upon. Oh, I know. You can all come up with a new name for me, since Daddy is really irresponsible and will probably forget to do it. Oi, that's slander, Peter said with a scoff. Arnie turned her avatar towards Peter and stuck out her little tongue. It's not slander if it's true, Daddy. Peter held his chest and took a step back before putting a hand on Gwen's shoulder. Gwen, honey, our daughter is entering her rebellious phase. Gwen just smiled and shook her head. How about Spinny? Penny said after thinking about it and looking at her cute avatar. Arachnopork, Spiderman said proudly. The dark spider of the evanescent stars in the sky, Noir said while looking at the distance with the wind fluttering on his trench coat, even though they were in a basement. Gwen too didn't even try and threw her hands up. I'm not even going to try. Sowsilk, Spiderman tried again, the pig spinner, the bacon weaver, swine threader. Arnie just looked at Spiderman directly, making eye contact, and in a serious voice said, stop talking. Which came as a gut punch towards him. He put both hands on the floor and stayed there, shedding tears about the unfairness. How about Arya? Gwen suggested. Confetti started appearing on the monitor and Arnie's avatar gained a party popper. And we have a winner. From now on this little spider lady will be known as Arya. Peter then shook head. Well, Arya, enjoy yourself on the web. Your mom and I have something to do, Peter said, secretly giving her a wink which she caught on. She did a military salute. Father, mother. I'll be sure to manhandle the fort in your absence. Peter chuckled and took Gwen's hand and led her towards the elevator. Gwen looked at him in confusion. We have something planned. Since when? Peter just smirked at her. Since I promised you a date. And what better date than exploring the city in the middle of the night? Gwen looked at him in surprise. Really? Her expression developed into a large smile. To which Peter returned one of his own, nodding his head, and off they went towards their date. Chapter 64. Third person's POV. So where are we going? Gwen asked excitedly while holding his hand and arm. Well, first we're going to need to change. We're not going to go on a date in our superhero outfits, Peter said, exiting the shed. But aren't we going to be needing money and stuff for that? There's not a lot we are allowed to do without, especially in another universe. Peter's phone then buzzed inside his pockets. Right, my phone came along with me. I forgot to check it since we were in a different universe. I didn't even think it worked. A barcode? Peter said questioningly, looking at it. That's right, Arya's voice sounded from his phone. In this world people can pay for things just using their phones. They would scan this and the money would then be transferred to them. That's pretty smart, Gwen said, pretty impressed. But is our money going to work in this world? Ha 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 ha, Arya just started laughing, confusion both Peter and Gwen. Let's just say Kingpin gave us a charitable donation. Peter started to laugh when he heard that. Ha ha ha, that's my girl. Her avatar appeared on his phone, puffing her chest proudly. Well, I'll leave the two of you to enjoy your date. Enjoy, she said before disappearing while waving her hand. And so they soon started walking out of Aunt May's house, and started walking around the streets of New York while wearing their Spider-Man outfits. No one batted an eye, thinking they were doing it to represent their fallen heroes. As they walked, they started looking around for stores or malls that were still open. Just as Peter was about to ask Arya for help, he spotted a clothing store called Modish Muse Boutique, which showed a window display of both male and female mannequins wearing a lot of flashy, trendy clothes. Let's go there, Peter suggested. Gwen just nodded her head and they both strolled inside. Although the security guard at the entrance looked at them weirdly, he didn't say anything. And once inside, Gwen went crazy looking for what to wear. She picked a few outfits, while looking for and picking out outfits for Peter to wear. After picking out a few, she dragged Peter towards the dressing rooms. She had him sit on a chair they had out for the male companion to sit on and walked inside. After a minute she walked out wearing a short pink blouse that left her stomach exposed while wearing a black skirt with black leggings and leaned her hand on the frame of the door giving Peter a suggestive look. Peter just looked at her for a bit before mouthing the words, "Change, now." Which caused Gwen to pout, "What, you don't like it?" "Oh, don't get me wrong, you look absolutely gorgeous, but there's just no way I'm letting anyone else see you in that should be for my eyes only." Gwen started blushing and giggling before going back inside and coming out wearing a white dress and high heels. The dress just barely covered her, but that if she walked it would rise up exposing what she would be wearing underneath. As she turned around trying to show him, Peter leaned out and smacked, but causing her to let out a yelp which caused her to almost trip and fall as she wasn't used to wearing high heels. "You better get change and not let anyone else see you like that." They heard someone giggling right after, causing them to look at a store worker coming towards their direction, which made both Gwen and Peter blush. Gwen scurried back inside the dressing trying to hide her embarrassment while Peter just hid in his hands trying to not look up. Peter was using all his remaining willpower to not use his invisibility abilities at the moment and hide from the world forever. "There's no need to be embarrassed, you guys are quite young, you would be surprised at how many couples your age do that," the female worker said, which wasn't helping Peter hide from his embarrassment. Peter just took the clothes he was going to try on and locked himself in the dressing room right next to Gwen's, which just caused the female worker to start laughing, finding them cute. Wanting to get out from such an embarrassing situation, both Peter and Gwen decided to get dressed in what they liked the most. Both of them then came out at the same time and looked at each other with a smile. "Well, hello there, gorgeous, aren't you just looking spectacular?" Hearing him, Gwen started blushing slightly before looking at Peter up and down and decided to tease him back, "If it isn't Mr. Handsome himself." What Peter is wearing. What Gwen is wearing. Peter then turned towards the female worker and asked, "Can we pay and leave wearing this and get a bag for what we were wearing?" The worker just smiled, "Certainly, just follow me." After scanning everything they told them the price and Peter showed him his phone, which they scanned paying for everything. The cashier just looked at them with a smile, "Thank you, come again," while handing them a receipt. To which Peter and Gwen nodded their head and started leaving with a smile. Peter showed the security guard the receipt, who nodded towards them, and left the store. As they walked out, they started walking towards a random direction, enjoying the look of the city in the night. Peter kissed the top of Gwen's head, which caused her to smile. "Do I ever tell you that you look absolutely amazing?" "Almost all the time," Gwen said with a smirk. Peter just smirked back, "If there's still an almost, that means I'm not telling you enough." Gwen smiles and snuggles her face on Peter's arm. Gwen looked around and pulled Peter into an alleyway where she proceeded to pull on his jacket and attack him with a long kiss. She closed her eyes and started to savor his lips with very movement. Peter held onto her waist and pressed her against the wall as they continued to aggressively make out. After a few minutes, Peter and Gwen were seen breathing heavily. "Sorry about that," Gwen panted with her forehead pressed against Peter's. "I didn't know how else to show how much I love you, words weren't enough." Peter was then the one to attack Gwen. Gwen's hands went towards Peter's hair and started gripping it due to how much she loved it. After a few more minutes of their aggressive lip smacking, Peter looked at Gwen in her eyes. "Did my actions shows that I probably love you more?" I'm not sure, I think I need another one to see," Gwen smirked. And Peter obliged, getting back to their aggressive lip smacking. Gwen lifted her thigh, which Peter took a hold of as they started tasting each other's tongue. When they separated, Gwen playfully nodded her head. "Yup, now I'm certain, I indeed love you more." Peter started chuckling. "I guess it's up for debate then." Which caused Gwen to chuckle as well. "I guess it is then. Let's continue our date, shall we?" Peter asked while backing away and holding out his hand. Gwen just smiled at him, taking his hand. "We shall." And with that they went to enjoy their date. Chapter 65. Third person's POV. Peter and Gwen were holding each other's hand as they walked through the night in the city of New York. "Do you think this is what our world is going to look like in the future?" Gwen asked, looking around in fascination. "Most definitely, but it won't be until a few more years," Peter confirmed with a smile. "Instead of going to another world, it feels like we just went towards the future," Gwen said with a smile. "So what are we going to do on our date?" "We will mostly explore and see what we find and enter any place that seems interesting. I honestly just want to spend time with you. Southwest, any place we go is interesting, even if we just decide to walk the entire night." Gwen smirked and pressed her chest against Peter's arm. "How do you even come up with these things to say?" Peter smirked right back and looked her in the eyes. "What can I say? I have a great muse, I can't help but get artistic." "Oh, that was a good one," Gwen giggled. Peter then saw a taco food truck. He turned towards Gwen and asked, "Want to try different types of food truck foods from the future?" "That sounds fun, let's," she said as she dragged Peter towards it. Fortunately, Peter managed to get Arnie to discreetly access an ATM, securing some swift cash without attracting attention, ensuring an enjoyable date. Gwen approached the taco truck, perusing the menu displayed on its side, and promptly placed her order. Peter followed suit. After a short wait and settling the bill, Peter and Gwen skillfully maneuvered through an alleyway before engaging in a bit of parkour to ascend the buildings. They gracefully traversed rooftops, savoring their food as they moved through the cityscape. Navigating the rooftops, Peter and Gwen engaged in conversation about their future plans and shared thoughts on the unfolding events. "I'm still wrapping my head around the fact that a multiverse actually exists," Gwen admitted, savoring the last bite of her taco. "Why? Is it that surprising to imagine another version of you that looks almost identical?" Peter asked, a smirk playing on his lips as he took the last bite of his taco. "It's unsettling, you know. What if there's an evil version of myself that comes, takes over, pretends to be me, and slowly infiltrates my life without anyone realizing?" Gwen expressed, rubbing her forearms. "Just thinking about it gives me goosebumps." Peter playfully scoffed, "I wouldn't put it past the realm of possibility, but fortunately for me, I'd know right away without a second thought." It was Gwen's turn to scoff. "Oh, yeah, smart guy, how?" Peter pulled her into his arms, planting a kiss on her lips. "Because only my Gwendolyn can look, feel, and taste this amazing," Peter said with a smirk. Gwen didn't appear amused and raised an eyebrow. "So, you'd have to touch and taste her to know it's me?" "Ah, no. And yes, I would still love you even if you were a worm," Peter said confidently. He suddenly stopped and chuckled to himself. Gwen looked at him strangely before asking, "What's so funny?" Peter continued laughing before replying, "Since the multiverse is real, there might actually be a universe where you're actually a worm." Gwen looked at him with a deadpan expression, her lips twitching as she tried to stop herself from smiling. Peter raised his hand in defeat. "I'm just saying, there is literally a cartoon pig version of me. The chances of a worm version of you aren't low." Gwen shook her head and rubbed her forehead. "Why did I have to find out the multiverse is real? I could have just remained blissfully unaware and stayed ignorant. But now I have to wonder if there really is a worm version of me." Peter hugged her, planting a kiss on her neck before tightening the embrace. "I wouldn't worry if I were you, after all, you'd be the cutest worm ever," he teased with a warm smile. Gwen chuckled, shaking her head. "I hate you so much," she playfully muttered. "I love you too," Peter replied with a smirk. Gwen, wanting to change the direction of the conversation and not wanting to deal with the headache of wondering if there really is a worm version of her, pointed towards a building a few structures away. "What's that?" she inquired. Peter squinted his eyes. "Oh, cool. A glow-in-the-dark mini golf course. We have to try this out." Gwen, having never tried golf before, shrugged her shoulders and followed Peter from the tops of the buildings. They landed by an empty alleyway and walked towards the golf course, where they paid for their spot inside. "You haven't played golf before, right?" Peter asked. Gwen shook her head, indicating no. Peter nodded. "Well, good, because neither have I. There's a first for everything." He smirked before twirling the golf club over his hand and striking the glowing green ball in front of him. The ball sailed over all the obstacles and landed directly into the hole. Gwen turned towards Peter, raising an eyebrow. "I thought you said you've never played." Peter just gave her an awkward smile. I actually didn't mean to do that. I meant to hit it softly." I totally meant to do that. I'm just that awesome." Gwen chuckled before placing her glowing blue golf ball in the starting position. As she positioned her golf club, she started swaying her hips, capturing Peter's attention. Swinging her golf club, the ball soared through all the obstacles, creating a hole the size of the golf ball in a straight line before embedding itself into a wall. Gwen looked at the golf ball through the holes she made and glanced at Peter with an awkward expression, whispering, "Oops," she said questioningly. "We run?" Peter asked. Gwen nodded as they both threw their golf clubs away and started running out. A few seconds later, an angry voice echoed behind them as they ran out. "Hey, wait! What the hell did you kids do to the walls? You're going to have to pay to fix this." But Peter and Gwen just looked at each other as they ran, prompting them to start laughing. Peter and Gwen then parkoured through the side of the building, making their way through the rooftops once again. "We didn't have to run, you know," Gwen said with a small smile. "I know, but wasn't it fun thinking we were troublemakers getting away?" Peter smirked. Gwen rolled her eyes and put a hand on Peter's chest. Yeah, my big bad troublemaker, I guess it was fun." Peter wrapped his arms around Gwen and pressed their heads together. "If I'm a troubled maker, what does that make you? You seductress, don't think I didn't see the way you were wiggling that cute butt of yours towards me." Gwen blushed at being called out and looked at Peter's eyes challengingly. "Oh yeah? So what are you going to do about it, big guy?" Peter didn't respond and took Gwen's lip. His hand slithered around her waist, taking a hold of her thick behind and gave it a firm squeeze, causing Gwen to moan into Peter's mouth slightly. As Peter backed away, he said, "I saw a hotel when we're jumping buildings, want to finally do it." Gwen bit her lips seductively and nodded her head, her eyes filled with lust. Peter picked her up in a princess carry and took her away towards the hotel he previously saw, while Gwen held onto Peter's neck, waiting in anticipation. Chapter 66. Third Person's POV. After swiping the room key card to their paid hotel room, Gwen went in first, with Peter just stepping a foot inside. Gwen didn't even wait for Peter to step completely inside and jumped on him, wrapping her legs around him. Gwen took a hold of Peter's face and brought her head down towards him, kissing him, tasting his lips. Peter took a hold of Gwen's butt and held her as he finished stepping inside, closing the door with his foot, and tossed his bag with their spider suits towards a corner. As Peter walked towards the bed, savoring Gwen's taste, Gwen took off his jacket without looking and threw it somewhere she wasn't looking. When Peter got in front of the bed, Peter threw Gwen on it, which caused her to bounce up slightly. In one fluid motion, Peter effortlessly removed his shirt using one hand, revealing his well-defined muscles and abs. Gwen, who was leaning on her arms to arms, looked at Peter's body with a hungry gaze. She licked her lips as she whispered, "Come to mama." Peter, who was able to hear her with his enhanced senses, smirked. He grabbed ankles and pulled her close and started kissing her. Gwen had a hand on his chest, feeling his muscles, while Peter started taking off her clothes, leaving her in just her underwear and bra. Peter went and started kissing her neck, making Gwen let out low, subtle moans. Peter reached from out underneath her and unclipped her bra while simultaneously giving her a hickey on her neck. Peter started to go downwards, kissing her. He grabbed her bra with his teeth and flung them off of her. Peter took her nipple inside his mouth and started sucking, biting, and liking it while pinching and playing with the other one. "Peter," Gwen moaned while holding his head. Peter switched between them, not playing favorites, before kissing her right in between and traveling down her stomach, causing Gwen to giggle due to how ticklish it felt. When Peter got towards the end of her stomach, Peter smirked and made eye contact with Gwen as he bit on her underwear before pulling them off with his teeth as well, which just made the lust in Gwen's eyes grow. Peter took them off without once breaking eye contact, making Gwen blush. Peter knelt by the end of the bed and put Gwen's leg over his shoulder and brought his face closer to her private area. Gwen let out a quiet moan as she felt Peter's breath by her opening. Before she could ask anything, she threw her head back and moaned as she felt Peter's tongue slide against her entire slit. "Oh." Peter licked her entire slit one more time and felt her little button at the end of it. Peter first stuck his tongue inside his hole, making Gwen moan out his name. "Oh, Peter." Peter went under and over her thighs, taking a hold before exploring more of her insides with his tongue. Gwen moaned once more before throwing her head back and taking a hold of Peter's hair. She unconsciously rocked her hips on Peter's face. Peter then let go of her, causing her to look down on him questioningly before she could express her dissatisfaction. Peter started sucking on her pink bub while simultaneously pushing and fingering her insides. "Ayaha, oh Peter, I feel something coming." As Peter was sucking her bub, her thighs closed up, squishing his face as Gwen thrusted her hips upwards as she started coming. "Aya, I'm coming." Peter didn't stop and continued to eat her out as she orgasmed. She came down from her orgasm panting, having never experienced something so pleasurable before. Peter stood up and smirked at her panting and licked his finger before wiping the corner of his mouth, making Gwen start blushing and get embarrassed. "Delicious," Peter said, licking his lips, savoring the taste. Seeing him teasing her, she grew competitive. With renowned vigor, she stood up and aimed Peter's body to the bed before pushing him, making him sit down. Gwen knelt down before him and reached for his belt buckle. After undoing it, she took a hold of his pants and underwear before pulling them off in one quick motion. Gwen knelt before Peter's cock in shock. "This thing is supposed to go inside of me?" she asked with a hint of fear and awe in her tone. She slowly reached out her hand towards cock, and as she wrapped her hand around it, it twitched, taking her by surprise slightly. Peter gave her an awkward smile. "Sorry, your hands were cold." "And your cock is hot," she unconsciously whispered out, tightening her grip on it. She slowly started to stroke it slowly, afraid that if she did it too fast it could hurt him. "You can go faster," Peter said when he saw her hesitation. Gwen nodded and started to pump her fist at a faster rate. She then noticed precum leaking from his tip, which started to lubricate his shaft. The more Gwen looked at the precum surrounding his tip, the more curious she got. She went and licked the tip of his cock slightly. "It's not too bad," she thought to herself, before going for seconds. She started licking his tip while continuing to stroke his cock. She ended up getting the tip inside her mouth and started to suck on it while her hands never stopped, causing Peter to groan due to the pleasure. Although she was inexperienced as much as he was, she made up for it with her enthusiasm. She started to slowly take Peter's cock deeper and deeper into her mouth while licking his shaft every time she bobbed her head. Gwen closed her eyes and savored the precum that was coming out of Peter's cock. Peter groaned once more and put his hand on her head and unconsciously pushed her head down more than she expected. She made a few gagging sounds but otherwise didn't stop. Instead she picks up her speed, slobbering his cock with her saliva. Peter grabbed her hair and held it in a ponytail and watched as Gwen went up and down his cock with great enthusiasm, bringing him close to the edge. He slowly thrusted his hip, making his cock go even deeper. Gwen had to stop stroking him and hold his thigh for support. She kept making gagging noises but she was enjoying it all the same. She then felt his cock start twitching inside her mouth, which was followed by Peter's grunts. "Shit. Gwen, I'm close to blowing my load." When hearing that, she picked up her speed until Peter held her head in place when she reached his pelvis. "I'm coming," Peter grunted, shooting down his webbing, doing Gwen's throat. Gwen took it all and swallowed everything Peter let out. After a while Peter stopped and slowly exited her mouth. Gwen stood up, wiped the corner of her mouth and looked at Peter directly in his eyes, before licking the finger she wiped the corner of her mouth with. Peter smirked and put Gwen on his lap, with her folds resting on his soft. Peter started kissing Gwen. Gwen, getting more turned on, started grinding her hips against his cock and moaned inside his mouth. "Take me, Peter, ravish me, make me yours, do whatever you please with my body, just take me already, I don't know how long I can take this," Gwen said, breathing heavily due to the sexual tension. Peter took a hold of Gwen's body and laid her on top of the bed. While looking down on her he asked, "Ready?" To which Gwen blushed and nodded. And off they started their wild night. Chapter 67. Third person's POV. Gwen laid underneath Peter with her hands around his neck, looking at him in his eyes. Peter kissed Gwen before taking a hold of his tool and started aiming it towards Gwen's pussy. Gwen moaned as she felt Peter's tip start entering her pussy. Her moaning got louder as his cock went further in, expanding her insides until he reached an obstacle, which was her hymen. Peter looked at Gwen for confirmation. Gwen bit her lip and nodded her head. And with a big thrust Peter pushed through, breaking her hymen, making Gwen cry out in pain and pleasure. They both started glitching in place for a few seconds before stopping, causing them to groan out in pain. Peter, trying to salvage the situation, looked at Gwen and teased her, "Damn ma, your inside felt so good you made me glitch from this reality." Gwen, who had tears in her eyes due to the pain of having her virginity taken and then glitching, smiled, appreciating Peter's humor in a time like that. She pulled Peter's head down to her level and started kissing him, tasting his lips, savoring them, as their tongues battled with each other. As they caught their breath with their foreheads pressed together, looking at each other's eyes, "You can start moving now," Gwen muttered. Peter kissed her one more time before he slowly started moving his hips. Peter grunted as he felt Gwen's wet and hot walls clinging and scrapping against his cock. While Gwen at first moaned in pain, wondering why anyone would find it enjoyable, before those feelings of pain started turning into pleasure. "Mama, Peter." Gwen moaned. "Okay, I'm starting to get why this is so addicting," Gwen thought to herself in between her moans. Faster, Peter," Gwen cried out, now feeling only pleasure as Peter's cock scraped against her insides. Peter increased the thrust of his hip, causing Gwen to moan to increase. Peter thrusted his entire length inside, making Gwen moan in both pain and pleasure as Peter's cock started crushing the entrance of her womb. The two moaned and groaned in pleasure as their hips clashed. The sounds of their skin slapping against each other resounded around the room. The sound of the bed creaking and the headboard slamming against the wall increased as they increased their pace. The two lovers moaned and groaned as they both started approaching their limit. Peter thrusted a few more times before stopping deep inside Gwen, his cock expanding as he shot his load deep inside of Gwen. Feeling Peter's cum enter her womb was enough to send Gwen over the edge. Her eyes rolled to the back of her head as she came, her pussy clenching around Peter's cock, milking him dry. Peter and Gwen panted as they caught their breaths. Peter was about to pull out when Gwen stopped him, grabbing him by the neck and pulling him closer. She whispered seductively in his ear, "I don't want any of your cum to leak out, so stay inside." Peter felt a shiver run down his spine as he looked her in the eyes. He saw how much she wanted this and how serious she was. He smirked at her and leaned closer, whispering in her ear, "Your wish is my command." Peter kissed Gwen before pulling out and flipping her onto her side, lifting her leg and sliding himself back in. Gwen moaned as she felt Peter re-entering her, his cock still hard even after the intense session they had. Peter grabbed her hand and interlocked their fingers as he started moving his hips, thrusting his cock into Gwen's pussy. Gwen bit her lip in pleasure as Peter's cock reached places she couldn't even imagine, the new angle allowing Peter's cock to scrape against the inside of her pussy. "Oh, Peter. It feels so good," Gwen moaned as she turned her head towards Peter, locking their lips together. Your pussy is so tight and warm, Gwen, it's sucking me in," Peter groaned, as he moved his mouth down and started sucking on Gwen's neck. Your cock feels so good inside me, fuck," Gwen moaned, the new position in Peter's cock reaching new angles, sending Gwen to heights she's never been to. Peter's hand snaked around Gwen's front as he started fondling her breast. He twisted her nipple and pulled at it, making Gwen groan and moan in pleasure. Gwen turned her head towards Peter again and started kissing him, while their tongues battled with each other. Gwen used her hand to grab Peter's hair and pull him closer. The two broke the kiss, gasping for air. Peter increased his speed and intensity as his hand trailed down and started rubbing Gwen's clit, which caused her to start moaning even louder. "Oh, Peter." Gwen cried out. "Gwen, your pussy is too good." "I'm gonna come," Peter groaned, feeling Gwen's pussy clench around him as his thumb rubbed circles on her clit. "Me too, Peter." "I'm gonna come," Gwen replied, feeling Peter's cock start to twitch inside her. "Come for me, Gwen," Peter said as he pinched her clit and bit down on her neck, making Gwen come all over Peter's cock. Her walls clenched around his cock, milking it, making him explode inside of her, filling her up. Peter and Gwen laid there catching their breaths, as Peter was about to pull out. Gwen grabbed his hand and stopped him. "Like I said before, I don't want any of your cum to be wasted, so please stay inside." Peter just looked at her with a smirk and started thrusting, surprising her. "Oh, what are you doing, Peter?" Gwen asked, surprised as she turned her head to look at him. Peter just smirked and continued thrusting. "Like you said, you don't want any of it to leak out, right?" "Well, yes, but Gwen started before moaning as Peter picked up his speed, his hand going to her breast and playing with her nipple. "It's okay, just enjoy the ride," Peter whispered in her ear before nibbling on her earlobe, his hips still thrusting into her. Peter and Gwen laid there enjoying themselves, both of their bodies and minds lost in pleasure. "I'm close, Peter," Gwen moaned. "Me too, let's come together," Peter grunted, speeding up his thrust. "Peter," Gwen cried out in pleasure as her pussy clamped down on his cock. Peter grunted as his cock twitched, releasing his seed inside Gwen. The two collapsed as they caught their breath. "That was amazing," Gwen panted, smiling at Peter. "It was," Peter replied, returning the smile. "I didn't know it could be so addicting," Gwen admitted, blushing as she looked at the ceiling. "Now you know why people go crazy over sex," Peter joked, making her laugh. After a few minutes, Gwen's eyes widened in horror. "What if I become pregnant?" "I was so lost in the moment that I forgot all about it." Peter's eyes widened in shock when he also realized, "We could go and get the after-morning pill." "No, I don't think that's possible. My body has been changing a lot recently, it's almost like it's evolving. The pills probably won't work on me, I think my body would probably just reject it," Gwen replied. Peter sighed. "Fuck it, I'm going to do the manliest thing a man could do in this situation." "It's okay, Gwen, if you get pregnant. Then it'll be because we made it together, so I'll take responsibility," Peter said, looking into her eyes. Gwen looked at him surprised before she started laughing, making him frown. Peter then started to remember something and asked, "Hey Gwen, when was your period?" Hearing this, Gwen's tensed body relaxes and lets out a sigh of relief. "Today's my safe day. I don't think I have ever been luckier." "Well, I guess this was our first time. So, I don't think we did it wrong," Peter said, letting out a breath of relief. Gwen looked at Peter and smiled. She moved closer to him and laid her head on his chest. Peter's arm wrapped around her and hugged her, Gwen nuzzled closer into his chest and closed her eyes. A few minutes passed and the two fell asleep, both tired from their recent activities and being transported to another world. Chapter 68. Third Person's POV. The next morning Peter and Gwen woke up. Gwen woke up with a smile on her face when she saw herself waking up in Peter's chest. She went and kissed Peter on cheeks and patted his chest. "We have to get up, I'll hop in the shower first." Gwen hopped off Peter and winced slightly as she still felt sore from last time. She quickly went and entered the bathroom of the hotel. Peter, who was lying on his back with his hands behind his head, smirked when he heard the shower on and threw the sheets off of him. He just confidently strolled in, surprising her as they had never taken a shower together before. "Aha!" Gwen screamed as she instinctively covered all her private parts. Peter chuckled, "What are you covering yourself for? It isn't like I haven't seen you naked before." Gwen blushed when she realized. Peter got in and hugged Gwen from behind, causing her to blush even further. "I was just surprised, that's all. I've never done this with you before." "Well, I guess it is my turn to ask you for a shower together." "I see. Now, let's just enjoy ourselves." "Okay," she said. As Peter started washing her body, she felt his hands rub the soap into her skin. The two of them enjoyed the moment as they were getting used to this feeling of showering together. They enjoyed each other's company as they took turns washing each other's backs. He then rubbed the soap onto his hands and lathered them up before washing her body. Once he finished with the upper part of her body, he started to move down to her stomach, which caused her to blush as she felt him wash her stomach. She felt him move even lower and he was washing her legs now. Gwen could feel the blood rushing to her face as his hand was getting closer and closer to her nether regions. Her whole body felt like it was on fire and her heart was beating wildly in her chest. Gwen closed her eyes and moaned when she felt Peter's hands on her butt. He massaged her butt cheeks for a bit before moving to her legs and then moving up to her pussy. "Aya." Gwen moaned as she felt Peter's fingers enter her pussy. Pee, Peter," she moaned. "It's okay, Gwen, just enjoy it." Peter's fingers went deeper and deeper into her pussy and he moved faster. Gwen couldn't control herself anymore and started moaning loudly. She came with a scream as Peter continued to finger her. Gwen could feel the juices flowing from her pussy as she orgasmed. "Oh, Peter," she moaned. Peter pulled his fingers out of her pussy and smiled at her. "You taste really good, Gwen," Peter said as he licked his fingers. Gwen blushed even more when she saw him do that. "Now it's my turn to have fun," Peter said. Peter turned Gwen around and kissed her. Gwen could still taste her own juices on Peter's lips and she kissed him back with passion. Gwen felt Peter's erection nestle in between her butt cheeks. She could feel her pussy getting wet again as she rubbed her ass against Peter's cock. Gwen moaned as she put her hands against the wall of the shower. Peter took a hold of his cock and placed the tip at her entrance. Peter pushed his cock inside of her. "You." Gwen moaned as she felt the head of his cock enter her. Peter held onto her hips as he slowly pushed his cock deeper into her. "Ah." Gwen screamed as she felt the entire length of his cock enter her pussy. "Oh God." Gwen cried as Peter thrust his cock in and out of her pussy. Peter kept thrusting his cock deep inside of her and he moved faster. Gwen was screaming and moaning as Peter fucked her. "Oh God." Gwen screamed as she came. "Fuck." Peter moaned as he took out his cock and sprayed his cum all over Gwen's butt and lower back. Gwen didn't hesitate as she turned around and got on her knees. She took Peter's cock in her mouth and started sucking. Peter couldn't believe how good Gwen was getting at sucking his cock. Gwen started licking his cock clean while stroking it with her hand. She then took his cock back into her mouth and sucked on it. Peter moaned and grunted as he felt Gwen's tongue lick the tip of his cock. Gwen's tongue licked up and down his shaft and he could feel her warm breath on his balls. Peter's breathing was getting heavier and he felt himself getting close. Gwen took his cock deep into her mouth and Peter grunted as he came. "Oh." Peter groaned as he felt his cum shoot into Gwen's mouth. Gwen moaned as she tasted his cum. Gwen swallowed the last drop of his cum and smiled. "That was amazing," she said. "Yes, it was," Peter replied. Gwen stood up and hugged him. Peter kissed her forehead and she giggled. Peter took a hold of her ass cheeks and lifted her up against the wall. Gwen had her arms around Peter as he held her up. Gwen put her legs around his waist and kissed him. He inserted his cock into her and began to fuck her once again. Ah. Gwen moaned as she felt Peter's hard cock going in and out of her. Peter thrust his cock deeper and deeper inside her. He grabbed her ass cheeks and squeezed them. Oh! Gwen cried as she felt her pussy get tighter. I'm going to come soon. Gwen moaned. Peter increased his pace and started fucking her faster and harder. You. Gwen moaned as she orgasmed. Her body shook and trembled as she came. Yeses. Gwen moaned as she felt Peter's warm load inside her pussy. Peter pulled his cock out of her and put her back down. Gwen smiled and kissed him. Let's continue this after the shower, Peter said. Gwen nodded and the two of them washed themselves again. When they were done, they dried themselves and went back to the room and got dressed. After he was done, Peter grabbed his phone and asked, Aria, anything new is happening? Getting back to business. Nope, just that this world Spider-Man is about to have his memorial services in a few minutes. If you don't hurry, you would have arrived on time if you guys weren't having such a good time, Aria teased. Gwen blushed when she heard the last part before her and Peter rushed out the hotel and towards the memorial service. Chapter 69. Third person's POV. Each spider-person secretly swung through the city, making their way towards the public memorial service that was being held towards Spider-Man. They all secretly watched as MJ got on the podium and started giving her speech with Aunt May standing behind her, each of them giving them their silent support. Peter sat on top of a building looking down towards everyone that was wearing Spider-Man mask with Gwen sitting on his lap. It looks like this Spider-Man is really loved, Gwen muttered seeing everyone gathered together. Peter just wrapped his arms around Gwen tightly. This is honestly a real eye-opener, Peter replied. This Spider-Man has impacted the lives of so many people. I can't help but feel a bit motivated. Gwen nodded her head in agreement. I know what you mean. It's making me glad that I decided to keep being a superhero and not just quit, she said softly. My husband, Peter Parker, was an ordinary person. He always said that it could have been anyone under the mask. He was just a kid that happened to be bit. MJ started off. Yeah, I'm not getting used to that, Gwen pouted. Peter just chuckled and kissed her cheek, making her scoff before smiling and paying attention to the much older-looking MJ. He didn't ask for his powers, but he chose to be Spider-Man. My favorite thing about Peter is that he made us each feel powerful. We all have powers of one kind or another. But in one way we all are Spider-Man and we're all counting on you. We have another Spider-Man unaccounted for, Aria interrupted, showing a much rounder-looking Spider-Man in their HUD. You sure that isn't just a regular guy wearing a Spider-Man outfit? There's a lot of those here today, Gwen asked, looking at his appearance with skepticism. I was looking over the footage last night as you guys were getting busy, Aria said with a teasing tone causing Gwen to blush. And look at what I found. She then showed a Spider-Man coming out of the portal and hitting an electric billboard face first before falling down off of it. Are there any more spider people that we have no knowledge of around? Peter asked. Nope, that's everyone accounted for. Keep an eye on him, was all Pete said as he watched Aunt May go up on the podium and give her speech. After her speech they all started paying their respect until late in the afternoon, with each Spider-Man watching like a silent protector. They all then regrouped and escorted Aunt May home. When they were all together, Aria used Peter's speaker on his phone to announce something. So I have good news and bad news. Which one would you guys want to hear first? They looked towards Peter in confusion, causing him to sigh before pulling up his phone and projecting Aria's image. Bad news first, Spider-Noir said with his arms crossed. Well, Miles accidentally broke the goober. What? They all shouted. We're all going to die. Spider-Ham screamed, dropping to his knees. They all stopped and looked at Spider-Ham with a deadpan expression. Seeing everyone looking at him, he stood up and pretended none of that happened. So what's the good news? He asked merrily. Most of them just rolled their eyes as Aria then showed a video of the much older Peter Parker following close behind Miles as he was making his way towards a graveyard. A Spider-Man is making contact with Miles Morales, Aria said. How is that good news? Paney asked, confused. It's not, but I thought if I add some news and say it was good news it would make the bad news better, Aria proudly stated. They all sighed as Gwen too asked, how did Miles even break the goober? Aria then showed a video of Miles walking up the steps to a building, realized that it was too high, walked back down, and went right next to a much shorter one. He took a running start to jump towards the building in front of him before tripping on his laces and falling off the building, hitting everything on the way down, landing on his side. He slowly took out the goober chip, in which the video ended. Ha 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 ha, Aria's laugh resounded throughout the room. It's funnier the second time I watch it. Mostly everyone had their faces buried in their palms. Didn't this world Spider-Man have a copy or something? Paney asked. To which Aria's small holographic image appeared, shaking her head. He doesn't. I already checked his servers, it appears he stole it. I would have gotten it from Alchemax's servers, but it appears they're stored in an independent server, so it has to be accessed manually. Well, it looks like we have a mission. Meet up with Miles, then go get to the computer at Alchemax, bring it here, make another goober/override key, take the goober to the collider that brought us here and go home. Why are we meeting with the kid? We could get everything done without him and not put his life in danger, Noir asked with a brow raised. 1. I don't think he would appreciate it if we did it without him, since this was a task given to him by this world Spider-Man. 2. After we leave, this world is going to need a Spider-Man to look after it, and as we all know that Spider-Man is going to be Miles, so might as well train him as best we can and put him in danger within our presence so we could properly guide him, Peter stated. Noir nodded his head in understanding. Makes sense. Now that Spider-Man is dead, this world is going to need someone, or else a lot of lives will be lost and everything will fall into chaos. Everyone got geared up and exited Aunt May's house before they took off, in the dead of night. Follow me, I already have their location, Peter said, taking the lead. Soon they saw something which left them in shock. Miles and a Spider-Man sticking to a train with webs, while Miles screams in panic. The Peter with the beer belly appeared to be unconscious as Miles tried his best to guide his way through traffic, which only caused them to swing uncontrollably. Miles screamed as beer belly Peter smashed into a light post as he started to regain consciousness, losing it again. He then hit a snowman, before they ultimately ended up on the floor in the middle of a crosswalk. Just walk right by us, citizens of New York, Miles groaned with Peter beer belly Parker unconscious next to him. Out of nowhere, webs shot from the sky, grabbing both Peter B. and Miles from the floor and pulling them up towards the roof of the closest building. Ah! Miles screamed, taken by surprise. They were both then surrounded by everyone. Dude, talk about chaos. If this was a pinball game, you would have scored big. You hit almost everything in the way, Peter said in a teasing tone. Miles' spidey senses alerted him of everyone around him, which was the same for them as they looked at Miles. It's the same as last time. You guys are the same as me, he muttered. Who are you guys? He asked, standing and looking around with caution. Well, that's a long story, Gwen too said as she took off her mask. Gwanda. Chapter 70. Third person's POV. I see. Miles muttered as he listened to their tales inside his room with Peter B. tied around a punching bag. I really messed up, didn't I? Miles said with an awkward expression while holding the broken goober in his hands. Don't worry about kid, it's quite literally your second day having these powers. We all accidentally broken a thing or two early on, Peter said, patting his shoulder. Kid? You don't look much older than me, Miles said with a raised brow. I'm like a year older so. Peter shrugged his shoulders. You are. They look at Peter in surprise. What? Is it that surprising? They all nodded their heads in sync. I assumed you were like 18 or something, not a 15-year-old kid, Noir said, sitting by the window overlooking the city. Wait, how long has it been since you were bit? Gwen too asked. Gwen and Peter then looked at each, like around 3 months ago. A/N, if someone can actually do the math, I would make love to you. Really? They all shouted once again, except for Miles looking surprised. Gwen and Peter looked at the others in confusion. What are you surprised about? Don't take this the wrong way, but I thought you would have had more experience or something with the way you have been acting. I wouldn't have assumed you were a newbie. Oi, Peter said. Gwen and I may not have been Spider-Man for long, but we know how to handle ourselves. Don't go underestimate us now, thinking we don't know what we're talking about cause you guys have more experience. They all unexpectedly started to glitch, causing some of them to fall to the floor, even Peter B. That was tied up and unconscious wasn't spared. Miles looked around with worry. So this is what they meant when they said they needed to do this quickly. They all groaned as they slowly got back up. Okay, I'm going to take that as a warning sign to wake up this hobo and get going, Peter muttered. I could use this, Spiderham said as he pulled out a mallet from out of nowhere. Where did you know what, forget it, Gwen said shaking her head. I got an easier way, Peter said as he rubbed his hands together, which caused small sparks to appear on his hands. Clear. Peter announced before placing his hands on the Peter B. BBBZZZZTTTT. Peter B. started spazzing out slightly. It appeared as if he was going through an X-ray, showcasing his skeletal structure. The others stared at Peter wide-eyed, while Miles' eyebrow scrunched up slightly. It's the same as what I did accidentally. Did we get bitten by the same type of spider? OWWW. Peter B. shouted, what the hell was that for? He asks while looking around. What's this, a cult or something for the Spider Supreme Overlord? Peter B. asked, noticing everyone else had spider-themed outfits. Since Spidey sense then went off, I see, so they're like me. I'm not explaining all of that again, Miles, you do it. I don't wanna, Peter asked as he laid on the couch with his head resting on Gwen's thighs. Gwen just shook her head before she started running her fingers through his hair. Miles looked at Peter B. apologetically, sorry about, electrocuting you and smashing your face along the ride. Peter B. just sighed, don't worry about, kid, I have suffered worse. So why am I tied up? In case you were dangerous or were an evil version of Peter, the multiverse is a big place, Miles said, and as you can guess, everyone here is the same as you, other beings from different universes. Miles then went on to explain everything, on how he accidentally broke the override key to the collider, aka the Goober, the plan to remake another one, train him along the way and send everyone home. Aha, well, I'm not the training type, Peter B. said, easily breaking free of his bindings and snatching the Goober that Miles was showing him from his hands. Man, I haven't seen these in a while. Well, where do we go next then? I'm a very busy person in my world, and need to be back quickly, Peter B. said, lying through his teeth. Peter then looked at Peter B.'s stomach and scoffed, yeah right. If you're a busy person, then I'm the president in my world. As for where we're going is Alchemax. Where we're going to make another override key, go to underneath Fisk Tower where the collider is mostly located, send us home, and then completely shut it down for good. Peter and Gwen then started to stand up before looking at each other and nodded their heads. Here Miles, catch, they both said at the same time, throwing him a bracelet. Miles clumsily catches both of them before looking at it curiously. What's this, he asked, unsure of what he's going to do with bracelets. Put it on and flick your wrist, Gwen instructed. Miles did as instructed and looked at his wrist in amazement as the bracelets transformed into web shooters. Whoa. There are two buttons, one to shoot webs and the other. It's better if you see for yourself, Peter said as he made his way towards the window along with everyone else. They all started to slowly come out the side of the building, sticking perfectly to it before they heard Miles utter a small whoa. Well, before anything, I'm hungry and I see a nice burger place, Peter B. said, walking down. We don't have time for that, Noir said before he heard the rumbling stomachs of both Peter and Gwen. Both of them blushed and grew embarrassed. I actually second that idea, Gwen, and I haven't had anything to eat. Gwen grew even more embarrassed knowing the reason why and just looked away, unable to look anyone in the eye. Ah man, this burger is so good, this place closed a while ago back in my world. They don't make burgers like they used to. Peter B. said while stuffing his mouth, eating sloppily. So. Peter B. said while licking the sauce of his finger, where is Alchemax? As Miles looked through his phone to look, Aria appeared and answered, it's in Hudson Valley, New York. Whoa, is this another spider person from another universe? Miles asked while looking at Aria's hologram. Nope, that's my A.I, Peter said while eating his fries. Yo, nice to ya. Name's Arachnid, Aria for short. Aria introduced herself by copying Peter's greeting. So cool. Miles exclaimed as he started poking her image, causing it to distort slightly. You have an A.I? Peter B. asked with a raised brow. You don't. Peter scoffed with clearly fake arrogance. As they finished eating, the check was placed in front of them, causing them to freeze when they realized they didn't have any funds. So who's covering the check? I'm not exactly carrying any money. You know, the whole other universe type of deal. Peter B. said as he pushed the check in the middle of the table. Everyone slowly turns to Miles as he pointed at himself. You can't really expect to pay for all of your meals, I ain't got that type of cash of me. Relax guys, I got you covered, Peter said, taking out money. But it's money from another universe. I don't think that will work here, Gwen too said warily. What part of I have an A.I did you guys not understand? Wait, you stole that money. That's bad, you know, they asked as they looked at Peter with disapproval. Peter simply rolled his eyes. Oh, relax, it was a gift. Right, Arya? Peter smirked. He, that's right. Kingpin decided to wear red last night and deliver us some gift in our stockings, he. Both Peter and Arya chuckled sinisterly, leaving the others speechless while Gwen just shook her head with a sigh.